The daughter turns to her mother and cautiously asks if she knows about the possibility of another reincarnation. Then she adds that if such a thing does happen, she asks her mother not to give birth to her again. The girl explains that for her, this is not an obligation at all, and therefore asks her mother to live for herself, without looking back at anything or anyone. Hearing these words, the mother, surprised, asks why her daughter brought this up so suddenly. The girl replies that stories and theories about reincarnation are very popular in magic classes these days. The woman is genuinely surprised, then says they should study harder since they still can't graduate. The young lady tells her mother that she's thought about it and doesn't see anything unusual in it, believing that even if everything changes, she will still be her and her father's daughter. The girl reflects that, as Baron Hadley's daughter, she will never achieve a status higher than that of a countess. She believes that, aside from minor details, her life as a whole will remain unchanged, and therefore, given the chance, she would prefer to be with her mother. Hearing this, the woman asks in surprise if such a chance is even possible. Hadley asks if his mother really doesn't know this, and then reveals that, although she may not seem special on the outside, she is actually a mage. Mom asks if she graduated from the academy with a 6th class honor, and then says that if such a chance really comes her way, she won't have another child. She smiles and wonders why she should go through the pain and suffering again. Hadley asks her mother if this is true, and if she could meet not her father, but another worthy man, tall, handsome, and confident, who, moreover, would understand the pictures she paints. The woman replies that her paintings are the same as her grades in magic. The daughter says she remembers her mother once telling her about her first love, and adds that if she were reborn, she would definitely confess her feelings to him. After some time, a cry is heard that the carriage has overturned. A woman falls out and, as soon becomes clear, falls into an eternal sleep. Suddenly, the protagonist loses track of what's happening and overhears a conversation about how, even if a mage healer arrives, he'll realize the case is too serious. The man says only a miracle can help. The man asks the doctor to relieve her pain. At that moment, the woman feels a subtle warmth in her daughter's whisper, realizing she is gradually losing consciousness. When the protagonist opens her eyes, she sees her parents' house and realizes that this room has become her niece's bedroom. She doesn't understand why she's here, and then decides the carriage accident was just a dream. The maid turns to Mrs. Riken and tells her it's time to get up. She reminds her that it's Monday and she risks being late for class. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes that the nanny passed away 6 years ago. The maid worriedly asks if her mistress is well. The lady replies that everything is fine and announces that the nanny has died. Hearing these words, the maid asks if she was having a bad dream. At that moment, the protagonist recalls her daughter's words about not forgetting about reincarnation and realizes that it really did happen. The nanny looks at her mistress in surprise. The young lady opens her diary and sees that it's already September, realizing she's returned to the autumn of her youth. It was October, the month she turned 19. The protagonist realizes she was reborn before graduating from the academy and marrying Gerald Hadley. The Viscounty of Copeland was distinguished by its exceptional wealth and was never a simple one. Although they had their own traditions, the family hadn't amassed a great history. The young lady thought the same could be said of her, as she didn't consider herself exceptionally beautiful or anything remarkable. The girl recalls that her parents doted on her, and her friends valued her as a person. She was betrothed to Gerald, the eldest son of Baron Hadley, and married life, as she expected, turned out to be rather unexciting. Gerald was an honest man and lived by his conscience. He didn't waste his money and loved their daughter, remaining a source of pride for his mother, the Baroness. His mother-in-law often said it was hard to find a husband as good as her son, believing that anyone else would have long ago taken an affair and become addicted to gambling. She insisted that he was kind and faithful, and that one could feel completely safe with him. However, the main character understood that he wasn't the ideal husband, as he was stingy with embellishments for her dresses, and the simple joys of life remained alien to him. They were the same height, so she had to wear flat wedding shoes. Riken considered this life calm and devoid of bright colors, but she understood that there was something truly special in it. Her daughter, born with an innate talent for magic. The talent was certainly controversial and evoked different feelings, but despite this, both she and her daughter were sincerely happy with this outcome. At that moment, the protagonist began to ponder a strange sensation. She wasn't sleeping, but she couldn't understand how that was possible. All her memories remained. She clearly remembered giving birth to her daughter and raising her. The realization that she was now 19 years old again, and her body was once again pure and innocent, seemed frightening and inexplicable. The girl decided that an ordinary dream couldn't be so detailed and realistic. Looking at herself in the mirror, she remembered her daughter's words about reincarnation. She had said that if you were to be reborn, you should definitely live the way you want, without looking back. The protagonist finally realized it wasn't a dream and that she had indeed returned to the past. The realization hit her suddenly, and she quickly ran out of the room. Riken recalled how her daughter told her this story before her mother died, and how she never had the chance to tell her she loved her. She also remembered that after she turned 70, her mother had gone deaf, making any conversation with her irritating. Despite this, she didn't like being alone. Over time, the young lady grew tired and resorted to sign language, but this only increased the irritation. This is exactly how it happened on the day they last saw each other. The young lady inquired where her mother was. The maid replied that her mistress had gone out into the garden to admire the flowers, but then screamed and added that she was not allowed in the office in her pajamas. When the girl opened the door, she was greeted by her father sitting in his office. The same father she had always considered stern and cold later developed dementia, aged rapidly, and began acting like a child. It was unbearably painful to watch. The father hugged his daughter and asked what was happening to her and what had happened. Then he turned to Sir Sturmel and suggested that he wait a little. At that moment, the girl realized that her father was not alone in the office, and she felt awkward since she had never found herself in such a situation before. Sturmel Raft was the main character's first love. He was tall, with silver hair and light blue eyes. The father asked his daughter again what the problem was. The maid replied that she didn't know, but that her mistress had been acting strangely ever since she woke up. The girl explained that she suddenly wanted to see her father because she had a very scary dream. He noticed that she was acting as if she were a little child again, then asked the nanny if she was in any pain, and added that he would ask the doctor to examine her thoroughly. The gentleman said he was sorry for the child, but he had an important conversation to attend to, requiring him to return to business. He then promised to stop by his daughter's house for lunch, and she agreed. The girl asked her father to tell Sir Sturmel that she was very sorry that he saw her in such an awkward and shameful state. Hearing this, the gentleman asked in surprise how she knew his name. However, he figured that since he'd graduated last year, they might have known each other. He also figured that if Riken knew about him, she must have considered him a truly influential person. Sir Sturmel was the illegitimate son of a daughter of the Raft family, but rumor had it he had never lost first place at the academy. The girl told her father she didn't know him personally. The nanny approached her mistress and reminded her that it was time to gradually get ready for the academy. The girl objected and declared that she wouldn't go today. She added that she wanted to see her mother when she returned, and so asked if she could skip a day. The maid replied that this was not the case. At that moment, Riken realized that studying didn't seem the most important thing to her. In her opinion, magical talent had always been the most important thing at the Elde Kingdom Academy. Mages wielded the greatest power in the country, and those who escaped their control were considered the most dangerous creatures. Girls also entered the academy for magic, but their path was especially difficult, as true magical talent was extremely rare. Female mages with rare gifts were not allowed to visit places where boys were present. Aristocrats without magical talent were also forced to enroll in the academy, despite their wishes. Girls didn't aspire to receive the same education as boys. Talented ones dreamed of becoming great magicians, while most had no desire to compete with them. Therefore, the academy taught the girls who entered art and etiquette, raising them to be noble women. The teacher always assured them that he would teach the lady everything necessary to become a worthy wife. After graduation, girls generally expected marriage, and this was considered far more important than their education. That's why the main character told her daughter that it was far more important to study what she truly loved and pursue her passion, and that attending the academy was not the most important thing. The woman understood that her daughter had far fewer limitations than she did, and likely often sneaked out. Now, however, she believed she had neither the strength nor the desire to attend the academy, so she simply remained lying in her bed. When her mother arrived, the main character was able to quickly calm down, gradually beginning to understand the reality of what was happening. Riken asked her mother if it was true there were no flowers left for the banquet. She explained that the weather had gotten colder earlier than usual this fall, so there weren't enough flowers, and suggested that Countess Adan had probably used them for her own celebration. My daughter suggested putting the flowers in small vases or small jars, assuming that then the plants from the greenhouse might be enough for at least modest bouquets. Buttercups, roses, eucalyptus branches. The girl thought that later she could add daffodils and jasmine. Upon seeing this, the mother said the composition looked beautiful and much better than she expected. She then admitted that she hadn't even suspected her daughter had such talent. Hearing this, the girl realized that she had actually been married for 20 years. The mother asked what problem was troubling her. The daughter replied that there were no problems and explained that she just wanted to talk to her. The woman smiled and reminded her that she had previously said that she would not talk because of her grumbling, and was surprised that the girl had walked in silence for so long. Riken said she just wanted to talk and that she felt like they hadn't had a real conversation in a while. The mother replied that her daughter was right, and upon hearing this, the girl hugged her tightly. At that moment, the protagonist clearly realized she had what she had long wanted to do. After her rebirth, she resolved to be gentler and warmer toward her parents, so that one day she wouldn't regret the words she hadn't said. Before the weariness of life and habitual pessimism had yet to overwhelm her heart, she wanted to tell them she loved them and hold them tightly, remembering that feeling. The young lady believes that even in the distant future, when memories fade and become blurry, she wants to be sure of their mutual feelings, so as to never completely lose them and forget the bond that unites their family. After finding herself back in the past, the girl made several small but significant changes in her life and took up drawing again, which she hadn't touched for a long time. After her argument with Polana, with whom she had stopped communicating, the girl no longer held a grudge. She also decided to change her dress for the graduation banquet, choosing a purple satin gown with delicate embellishments instead. Her maid and friends were against this choice, but upon seeing her in it, they were forced to admit it suited her. Every morning, the girl told her family she loved them. However, even after her transformation, she didn't become a great person overnight, as she still considered herself ordinary, with a simple face, a family, a mind, and the same abilities. Soon, her father intended to introduce Gerald to her as a suitable husband, and she was to marry again and live as before. But the girl had already decided that she would not commit herself to Gerald in this life, believing she could cope better without him and his family. Riken reflected on her understanding of why her daughter had said there was no point in giving birth to her if she could return to the past. She concluded that even if reborn, a person cannot fundamentally change their destiny until they themselves become completely different. At the same time, the main character believes that her daughter is a completely different matter, because she is her mother and this girl is her most beloved and dearest. For her, she was the whole world. The girl thought that this time she had to continue drawing. Overall, she was pleased with what was happening, although deep down she still felt a twinge of regret. Deborah asks Riken if she's chosen a prom date yet. She replies that she hasn't yet, as she was thinking of going with her father. The girl with black hair tells her not to be so boring, and then says that she herself wants to go with Lawrence. Hearing this, the protagonist thought that in the past, she would certainly have been envious. But now, knowing the future, she understood that Lawrence, until he was 50, couldn't stop staring at girls who had barely turned 20. Riken says that's a good idea, and tells her not to stray too far from her companion. Hearing this, the girl, surprised, asks why she sounds like her aunt, and then asks if she has anyone in mind she likes who could be her partner. The main character replies that she doesn't know and wonders if the father has the final say. Deborah argues that there is nothing wrong with meeting someone, adding that if you are lucky, you can meet a good person or even your destiny. Hearing this, the young lady thought that she had never had such a chance before, but now everything could really turn out differently. Late that evening, the main character couldn't understand why Penny hadn't come for her yet. It was raining heavily, and she knew that if she went to the carriage herself, she'd get wet and wouldn't be able to put on her dress, so all she could do was wait. Riken thought she liked the fresh, warm smell of rain, and the feeling immediately brought back memories of the past. When the girl turned around, she saw a young man greeting her. At that moment, she thought she was in an awkward situation, remembering that he had definitely seen her in those funny pajamas, and she didn't even know how to address him. The young gentleman introduces himself as Stürmel Raft and suggests that we simply call him Stürmel. The young lady replies that she knows his name and introduces herself as Riken Copeland. She mentions that last time everything turned out extremely awkward and apologizes for appearing awkward to him. He, however, says she has nothing to apologize for, as the Viscount seemed flustered at the time. Riken thanks him for his concern about his father and explains that nothing serious actually happened. The Tower of Mages is located at the Academy, so it is not surprising that the main character often crossed paths with Sir Stürmel, especially since he was considered a true genius. The girl understands that few people yet know that he is a powerful magician who controls two elements at once, water and wind. The whole world will only learn the truth 2 years later, when it is revealed that his father is King Bjordan. Until then, he will be considered the illegitimate son of Cyrionel and the grandson of the Marquis, but not an aristocrat. However, after the queen's death, the king will officially marry Cyrionel, and Sir Stürmel will take his father's surname. Being born illegitimate, he will not be able to inherit the throne, so with the queen's consent, the king grants him the title of Duke of Sagen. Sir Stürmel is a great magician, and a young, unmarried duke would become a star of high society in an instant, but that moment was still several years away. Riken knew he was beyond her capabilities anyway, and she expected nothing from him. Besides, she remembered that once, a long time ago, he had been her first love. The protagonist recalled a conversation she had once had with her daughter, but she had never taken it seriously. Come to think of it, he was just a young man now, completely unlike the Duke Sagen of her memories. Duke Sagna, whom the girl had once watched from afar, had always been attractive, even though he was older than her, and yet her heart involuntarily fluttered, for he was exactly as she remembered, gentle, calm, with the same cool ambience, unchanged by time. The protagonist felt as if she were once again plunging into her own memories. The young gentleman asked why she was standing there without an umbrella. The young lady replies that if she gets her dress wet, it will be ruined. Stürmel asks if she plans to wait until the rain stops. Riken explains that if she waits a little, a maid will meet her, since she knows what time she returns. The boy asks if she's cold. She replies that she's only a little cold, but overall, she's fine, and if it gets too cold, she'll go into the workshop. Hearing this, the young gentleman was visibly surprised, and then the lady explained that the workshop was located in the Academy's main building and belonged to the drawing club. After her words, he looked surprised again, and the girl, slightly perplexed, asked if he really hadn't known about the club's existence. Sir Stürmel replies that he knew about this, and also saw the exhibitions that were held from time to time in the main building, so it was not news to him. Riken notes that there were hardly any people there in those days. She claims that among the few visitors, he was the one who most often found himself. The young lady says there are almost no students at the academy who are truly passionate about drawing. Most students strive to be noticed, some excelling academically, others through connections and relationships. The girl believes that all mages dream of rising to the highest level possible, and future heads of families diligently master everything necessary. Therefore, she believes that drawing remains an activity for quiet and modest people like herself, who have time to spare. The young gentleman looked at the girl and noted that she didn't seem at all timid. Hearing this, she assumed he thought so because of the recent incident and smiled slightly. When the girl sneezed, she couldn't understand why he suddenly looked at her so strangely. Stürmel remembers his manners and remarks that in such a downpour, she must be freezing. The young lady assures him that she's fine and it's time for her to leave. The young man offers to walk her to the carriage. The main character is surprised and wonders if he wasn't standing in the rain because he too didn't have an umbrella. He asks if she's familiar with magic. She replies that she's barely even heard anything, only heard a few things. At this point, Riken remembers how her daughter studied magic at the academy and always talked about it with pride. Stürmel explains that because he is a wind mage, he has no trouble dealing with the weather on days like these. The Marchioness wonders if she can accept his kindness. As far as she knows, Duke Sagna has always been a cold man, rarely showing concern and never showing interest in anyone. Duke Sagna isn't the type to use magic to escort a stranger he's met for the first time. The protagonist believes that luck smiled on her precisely because she returned to the past. The girl is surprised to notice that the ground around her is completely dry and comments on this. The young gentleman explains that this is due to his ability to manipulate water to some extent, and then asks if she isn't surprised at all. The lady replies that she is, though he notes that she doesn't seem surprised. Riken says she feels like she's inside the magic itself, and if she thinks about it, she really is. She knows the word magic he's talking about is used in fairy tales filled with miracles. The maid quickly runs out of the carriage and addresses her mistress. The young lady reassures her, assuring her that everything is fine and that she is not wet. Afterwards, she thanks her master for seeing her out. He suggests that she quickly go inside, considering it too cold outside. Sitting in the carriage, the protagonist reflects on the new memory she's gained, one involving Sir Stürmel. She considers this a stroke of luck and is confident she'll be able to tell her daughter about it later, as she told her that she should confess her love to him when she was reincarnated. However, the main character is certain this will never happen, because he is the future Duke of Sagna, Sir Stürmel, destined to become the greatest mage. At the same time, she doesn't understand why her heart starts beating so fast. Riken reflects that even if she musters up courage, the world won't change or collapse. She wants to become someone who can overcome any obstacle with her determination, not someone who's afraid to say a word. The girl realizes she no longer wants to justify herself by thinking he's too distant and unattainable. She asks the young man if he hasn't already made any promises to be her partner at the prom next year. Stürmel replies that if Viscount Copeland gives his permission, he will be only glad. When the main character tells her mother about this, she becomes extremely indignant. Raising her voice, the woman asks what her daughter's even thinking about, and then asks if she knows he is an illegitimate son. The mother insists this man is not right for her, and never will be. She reminds her daughter that she has always behaved with dignity, and has not sought to attract unnecessary attention in society, and asks where these sudden outbursts come from. The main character understands that her mother is so against it precisely because Stürmel Raft is the illegitimate son of the Marquis Raft, an illegitimate child who is considered a symbol of immorality and a stain on the family's reputation. The young lady realizes that, despite his noble birth, he cannot inherit his parents' title. No matter how great a mage and guardian of the Mage Tower he may be, it would have been easier for him to have been born a commoner, as his talent would have been recognized much more quickly. The girl thinks that, in that case, he could have received a new title and surname and started his own family. But because he was the illegitimate son of aristocrats, the whole world knew his name, and it was impossible to hide his origins. The Marquis Raft family is one of the most noble families, immediately following the imperial family. Just 100 years ago, the Rafts were the ruling dynasty of an independent state, and now their position still differs from that of the other two Marquis families in the empire. All this is connected to Sir Stürmel, and is becoming a serious obstacle to his marriage. No matter how many girls he charmed, there were never any wedding rumors surrounding him. The daughter tells her mother that it was her own request, not his, and asks her not to blame him. The Marquise replies that no one has ever accompanied her, except her father and grandfather. The girl claims that Sir Stürmel couldn't possibly be interested in her and believes he was merely being polite. She adds that this is only about the prom and that she's not asking for his permission to marry. The mother acknowledges that her daughter is reasoning correctly and speaking like an adult. The girl hugs her and assures her that she's already grown up, then asks her not to worry because there's no reason to be alarmed. The daughter says she'll send him the letter herself, and it's not because she doesn't trust her mother. The mother replies that she doesn't think he'll be scared and understands her daughter's desire to remember her graduation, as going to the ball with only family would be too boring. A young woman asks her mother if people think she's completely untrustworthy. Her mother, in response, expresses surprise at the absurdities her daughter can come up with, then confidently asserts that she's kind, sincere, and would hardly enter into a relationship without her family's permission. The girl asks her mother if she wants her ball to be a memorable one. In response, the mother recalls her own ball, which she attended with the girl's father. Hearing this, the daughter says her parents are very lucky. The mother adds with a slight smile that she disobeyed her father back then. Riken thought about how wonderful it would be if Gerald had turned out to be just such a person. She realized that happy couples like her parents were rare. Their marriage was devoid of strong feelings and emotions, and the reason for this was far from just Gerald. The protagonist thinks she'll be able to live her life much better this time, now that she knows Gerald well. However, she feels strange thinking about him now, as if part of her wants to forget him and simply savor this precious moment. The maid cautiously asks her mistress whether she should go to Dr. Norman for some medicine that would help calm her anxiety. The young lady asks her not to worry so much, explaining that she doesn't take Sursh seriously, as they're only going to a ball together. The maid replies that she knows the Sir quite well, as her mistress often strolled in the garden specifically for meetings with him. Penny tells the girl she had no idea how brave she was. In response, the girl reassures her that they're just talking about going to the prom together and nothing more. The maid asks her mistress if she remembers the moment she walked beside him. Then she admits she was shocked when he took her hand, and she was so frightened she wanted to run away. Sir Sturmel used so much magic to keep her dress from getting wet. The girl, however, insists he's just an ordinary man with magic powers. Penny wonders why the lady is so pessimistic, and remarks that if he really didn't like her, he wouldn't have accompanied her, much less agreed to be her partner. The girl asks Penny not to tell anyone about this, as she's certain they won't see each other again after the ball. She notes that, in high society, rumors about who's dating and who's marrying whom are the most popular, and even after 2 innocent dances, all sorts of conversations will begin. Penny replies that she understands this perfectly well, as she's had more free time lately, laughs often, and acts more boldly than before. She admits that she's long dreamed of seeing her mistress truly happy. At some point, Penny unexpectedly quit her job and left the palace, marrying a man 8 years her senior. The protagonist later learned from her nanny that she had rushed into the marriage because she was pregnant. Riken looks at the maid and says that, in any case, it will be her parents who choose a suitable match for her, and she doesn't know how her own destiny will unfold. Therefore, she asks that she be sure to let her know if Penny ever finds a lover. Penny assures her mistress that she has no one. The girl, however, insists that she tell her if she runs into any difficulties, as she values her and sincerely wants to help her if she finds herself in a difficult situation. Hearing this, the maid is genuinely surprised, and admits she didn't realize how important she was to her mistress, and is therefore deeply touched. The protagonist replies that she worries about her, and considers her a trusted confidant, adding that if she suddenly marries and leaves her, she will be very upset. The main character writes a letter to Sir Sturmel, stating that she still remembers with warmth his help in the past and is grateful to him for happily accepting her ill-considered offer. She then informs him that his mother has given her permission and that when the time comes, she will eagerly await his visit and will definitely prepare some warm tea for him. As the young gentleman reads this letter, he notices the petals enclosed in it, and the scent of lavender gradually fills the entire room. The red-haired man tells the gentleman that such letters are usually written only by unmarried women, and asks in surprise if the gentleman doesn't know this. Then he asks, perplexed, why this suddenly happens, since he always thought the gentleman wasn't interested in women at all. The young man adds that he always thought that Sir could not distinguish women's faces, with the exception of his mother and cousin. Sturmel asks what other nonsense he's saying. The man insists it's true, recalling how he shed bitter tears thinking about everyone he'd refused. He also claims the Sir didn't even glance at Count Memmon's heiress and pretended not to know that Count Wayne's daughter was considered the most beautiful woman in the world. The young gentleman declares that he wasn't pretending at all. Hearing this, the boy asks in surprise if he really hasn't heard anything about her. Sturmel explains that he knew what Count Wayne's daughter looked like, but never heard what kind of person she was. At that moment, he remembers that all he knew was that the young girl was madly in love with him. He understands well how ill-considered feelings can ruin a life. The red-haired boy remarks that turning everyone down is going too far. Then he remembers how last time someone said that Sir was a water mage, but his soul was just as cold. The young gentleman replies that the soul has nothing to do with magic. However, the boy immediately asks who the letter is from, realizing that the sir would never accept a message from a stranger. The gentleman assures that there is nothing special about this, and explains that he simply agreed to accompany the daughter of Viscount Kapland to the graduation ball. At that moment, Sturmel thinks about her neat handwriting and the restrained, matter-of-fact way she writes. He believes that even if the 19-year-old girl is interested in him, it's completely invisible in the letter. There's not a hint of nervousness. Besides, if the Viscount's wife has given her permission, then everything is in order. Gerald suddenly asks why he would escort Viscount Copeland's daughter. He then says he knows the leading beauty of society, and Lady Copeland seems plain and unremarkable to him, and wonders if his taste has changed. The young gentleman asks him not to make fun of him, and explains that he's merely keeping her company for one evening. The young man replies that he has no fewer questions, and asks when the sir started attending balls, and what exactly attracted him to this lady. Sturmel explains that he couldn't refuse and offend the lady who had the courage to invite him. His assistant remarks that he's always been like this and believes there must be a compelling reason for refusing, then asks if he truly liked Lady Copeland. The gentleman informed Gerald that a project to stabilize the planet's climate had to be presented in 3 days. He then asked whether he had managed to solve the boomerang problem. At this time, the main character noticed that she was unable to fall asleep due to anxiety, but she still decided that she did not want to fail and make herself look bad. Penny approached the lady and reminded her that Baroness Belita had recommended using red fish for a certain effect, adding that she would apply it as soon as possible. The girl reassured Penny, saying nothing bad would happen if she applied the fish to her eye and that it might smell slightly of blood. She then thanked the maid and offered to take the fish to the kitchen. The lady noted that she had asked the butler to leave the honey, but decided it would be better if it were brought. The maid agreed and promised to return soon. Riken glanced in the mirror and noticed that even without the honey, her face was wrinkle-free. She thought youth was wonderful and decided it was time to start taking care of herself from an early age. The girl reflected that even if she wasn't a beauty now, in 20 years she would look younger than others. Then she looked through her wardrobe and recalled with interest why she had so loved cute dresses in her youth. The young lady noted that lace gowns called for a luxurious hairstyle, but realized the dress looked a bit rustic. She wanted to appear soft and vulnerable, so she chose a more subdued outfit. The maid informed her mistress that she had brought honey and asked if she needed anything else. The main character handed her the dress and explained that if anyone saw it, they would think she was getting ready to receive guests. She asked her to quickly straighten the lace on the collar, to which Penny agreed, adding that she understood her concerns well. Penny admitted that she wasn't confident in her abilities, but she believed that if she tried, everything could be fixed. The lady asked if she could borrow a handkerchief from the mother, then said that they would cover her face with it, and then they would apply honey together. The maid was surprised, thinking honey was very expensive, but her mistress reassured her, saying a spoon would be enough and the house wouldn't be poorer. She suggested Penny return quickly while she got busy preparing the honey. Riken knew the honey needed to be mixed with fresh wine. She remembered how she'd applied this mixture to her daughter's face in the past, and how her daughter would fall asleep immediately, and she'd have to wipe the honey off in her sleep. Instead of the borrowed scarf, the mother sent a new box containing one. She explained that her daughter had been making a fuss about decorating her dress, and the girl had noticed that it was overly decorated with ruffles. The young lady later decided to remove the headscarf and remake the dress into a summer outfit, thinking it was a great idea. The Marchioness noted that the outfit looked a little old-fashioned, but it suited her perfectly. She added that when she was young, people styled their hair like this, and the fashion was making a comeback. The mother took out a beautiful ring that the father had chosen for his daughter before the wedding and said that she should no longer wear it, so she suggested that she take the ring for herself. Riken admitted it was a luxurious gift and promised to pass it on to her daughter in the future. Her mother remarked that she had a very beautiful daughter. The butler announced the guest's arrival. When Sturmel saw the girl, he was amazed by her magnificent appearance, presented her with flowers, and said he had prepared this gift especially for her. The main character realized that the day had come when she received flowers from Sir Sturmel. The young gentleman noticed the girl's surprise and asked if she liked flowers. She replied that they were beautiful, thanked him, and invited him in for tea. The main character explained that this room was previously used for music, but now, since there is no one left to play, it is used for small tea ceremonies. Riken noted that with all the windows open, she could admire the garden. Since it was warm today, she thought it would be a pleasant place to spend time. Sturmel asked if there were any ginkgo trees in the garden. The girl replied that her mother had planted them. She admitted that the garden wasn't particularly unique, but there were many trees with unusual leaf shedding. The girl said the autumn leaves looked very romantic. The guy understood her, adding that walking on leaves was more pleasant than on a stone path. The lady asked the maid to bring a glass vase. The young lady admitted that the invitation was a bit bold, but she was grateful for the visit and would try not to cause any inconvenience. The gentleman was surprised, but noted that in fact he could cause her inconvenience, since she asked her mother for permission. Sturmel said he thought she had invited him as a partner while being unaware, and did not expect her to contact him or send a letter of apology. The protagonist realized he was different from the illegitimate children of other aristocrats. His mother, Lady Sirianel, was abandoned by the man who seemed to have married her when she was already pregnant. Rumors spread that the Marquis's daughter was pregnant and unaware of the father, and everyone condemned her for having a child out of wedlock. She felt like a small fish in an ocean of predators. Riken insisted that he and the Marchioness Raft had no reason to worry, so she too could remain calm. The young gentleman noted that, in reality, few people stay with him for such a reason, and thanked the girl for her understanding. The lady insisted that the reason was something entirely different. He inquired in surprise what the matter was. At that moment, a maid entered the room and said she had brought the vase the lady had requested. The girl carefully arranged the flowers in the vase and asked why he chose asters and not some other ones, since they are not often used for bouquets. The gentleman explained that they simply caught his eye and asked her if she liked them. The girl replied that these were the flowers she liked best, even more than luxurious roses or lilies. She then said she'd put them in her room as decoration, as their simple beauty would fit perfectly with the decor. The guy, surprised, asked if the flowers would last without water. The main character explained that she would add water to the vase a little later. He asked what kind of water they usually use and whether anything needed to be added. The lady suggested adding a little sugar or a copper coin. Sturmel cast a spell and announced that he had added a spell to the water to keep the flowers fresh longer. The young lady reflected on how she now understood the sound of his spells and recalled that her daughter's spell had sounded like a xylophone. Riken thanked the gentleman and noted that this was the second time she had witnessed magic with her own eyes. He replied that it was nothing special, as waterbenders mastered such things in the early stages of their training. The girl said his skills were impressive, and it seemed incredible that it could be done so easily. He explained that maintaining magic for long periods of time is no easy task. Penny apologized and announced that she had brought what the mistress had asked for earlier. The young gentleman, surprised, asked if the dress would be purple, admitting that he was far from being a socialite and was curious whether brightly colored clothes were common. The main character explained that red wasn't her color, and that it would be better to choose something that would look harmonious, not just fashionable. She asked him to accept this as a thank you, considering the gift light and unobtrusive. The girl said Sir Sturmel had prepared a suit in a delicate shade, and she thought there would be no problem. Since he had accepted her invitation, she asked if he would be able to accept this gift as well. The young gentleman examined the gift and thanked her. He glanced at the velvet tie and thought he had accepted her invitation, and now she had presented him with a small gift, and that was probably where it would end. Sturmel told the girl that since she'd chosen a tie for him, he offered to help her create cufflinks, as he didn't have any to match her dress. He revealed that these were all he had. Riken asked if they were for casual wear. He explained that he'd never had occasion to wear a tailcoat, and rarely appeared in public, so simple cufflinks would have looked out of place and wouldn't have complemented her outfit. Hearing this, the main character thought he was proposing to meet again. He asked if it would be difficult for her. The girl countered that it wouldn't be at all, and eventually agreed. The mistress turned to the maid, saying she wanted some time alone. Penny replied that she would call her when it was time for dinner. At this point, the young lady reflected on her promise to meet him again. She had thought it would be easy to survive this encounter, cloaked in politeness, but now she realized that a second meeting was a different story. The girl believed that seeing him again wouldn't be a big step forward. She didn't know what to do with Gerald and thought she was crazy, but she knew nothing terrible had happened. It was just another meeting. Riken missed her daughter. The main character told her friend Mariella about this. She was surprised and said that still waters run deep. She added that if anyone else had said this, she would have been surprised, but hearing it from her was doubly surprising. Riken remembered how, just recently, she'd thought she'd marry whoever her father chose. Now she was just going shopping, and that didn't count as a date. Mariella inquired how it all happened, noted that everything had changed, and asked if they would go together, since, in her opinion, her mother would not have allowed them to be alone. The main character said she would go with Miss Rod and Sir Sturmel. The red-haired girl wondered if she thought the gentleman liked her. The young lady remarked that it was practically impossible, since they'd only seen each other a couple of times. Mariella countered that it was still true, because logically speaking, he'd hardly be able to refuse her request, given his friendship with her father. Her thought was that the suggestion of meeting again didn't quite fit into the picture. The red-haired girl asked if there wasn't a sense of tension around him. Riken replied that the atmosphere was quite pleasant. Hearing this, the girl remarked that they got along well. At that moment, the protagonist realized she was in trouble, as she was set to meet the herald 2 months after graduation. She understood that dating other boys before marriage was not generally considered unusual, but her situation was unique. The young lady thought that she needed to marry the herald in order to meet her daughter again. Suddenly, another girl approached them and asked what they were talking about so seriously. Mariella replied that Riken had mentioned going to prom with Sir Sturmel. The protagonist noticed Count Wayne's daughter approaching her. Previously, she had seemed beautiful, confident, and mature, but now it seemed as if Lady Wayne was merely trying to appear mature. Compared to her daughter, she seemed like a child. The Countess asked if Lady Riken had laughed recently. The protagonist remarked that it was the first time she had shown interest in her. She also noted that, although they were the same age, they hadn't previously had any connection, and so she was pleased to have had this conversation. The Countess mentioned that she thought the lady had recently spoken of Sir Sturmel and offered to give her the details. Riken explained that her father was friends with Sir, and that was why he had decided to escort her to graduation. At that point, she decided to be honest, believing it was the smartest thing to do to avoid the awkward situation. The main character understood that no matter how the lady expressed her feelings for Sir Sturmel, he ignored her, and this had already become a well-known story among the girls. The Countess noted that the girl was kind and discreet, so she was unlikely to be an obstacle. She then added that she should make sure his attention wasn't wasted. Suddenly, the girl noticed the bird and was surprised. It was a madogu. She admitted that she only knew the basics and had never seen such mages in person, much less outstanding ones. The silver-haired boy thanked her for the compliment and then asked if her classes were over. She replied that she would be leaving the academy soon. The young gentleman announced that he was also finishing up and suggested meeting near her building. The girl said they could simply meet near the main hall. Sturmel noted that he walked faster, so he suggested that she wait, considering it impolite to make her walk a lot. Hearing this, the girls expressed envy. The main character explained that they were simply going to pick out cufflinks and reminded them that she had already told them this. Riken, seeing Lady Wayne, thought that she was clearly angry, and she became curious about how things would turn out because she did not want to create unnecessary problems. Suddenly, the girl felt pain in her leg and realized she was wearing shoes with incredibly high, thin heels. She knew they were difficult to walk in without an escort, but she couldn't understand why she'd chosen to wear them. The young gentleman, noticing the girl, greeted her and offered to carry the books, if she didn't mind. The lady thanked him and said it wouldn't be difficult for her. However, he insisted that it would be better if he carried the heavy items. Even thin books can weigh quite a bit together. The gentleman asked if her maid had arrived. The girl replied that her nanny would be arriving today, and there were too many people there. He explained that the nanny was acting as her guardian and was probably waiting for her in the carriage, and then suggested they go. The protagonist thought that, even though they were simply walking together, her heart fluttered. She remembered how she had also felt excitement at the moment of her wedding with the herald, but now it was connected with the anticipation of the future. Riken noted that despite the heels, he was still quite tall. She thought of herself as stupid and imagined how difficult it would be if she ever truly fell in love. Stormel noticed that she might be uncomfortable and suggested that she speak up if she didn't like something. The girl countered that this was simply a first for her. The young lady introduced them. Her nanny, Miss Rod, and Mr. Sturmel Raft. The nanny said it was an honor to meet them, and he remarked that he was pleased to meet them and grateful for their help today. The main character asked where they were going today. He replied that he wanted to surprise her. She admitted she had no idea where they might go and thought it certainly wasn't a jewelry store. The gentleman informed the lady that they had already arrived and helped her out of the carriage. The young lady caught the scent of paint and realized they were on Anzola Street. She was surprised, as she'd expected to pick up cufflinks. He'd reminded her of the art club, which was why he'd brought her here. Sir Sturmel explained that there was an excellent art store a little further on. He added that if she had trouble walking, they could go elsewhere. The lady replied that everything was fine, and that she had long dreamed of visiting there. The protagonist noticed that the tools and canvases she'd always dreamed of were on display here. Anzola Street is where all the art shops are, and artists from all over the continent flock here. The young gentleman asked if she had been here before. She remarked that it was not a place for wandering alone, so the butler usually bought her everything she needed for painting. The guy thought that since they were here, it would be great if she could choose something interesting for herself. Riken turned to the nanny and said that if she didn't feel like going to the shops, she could stay in the carriage. Hearing this, the nanny was surprised and asked if that was really possible. At this point, the young gentleman realized it would have been better to ask her opinion beforehand, but seeing her joy, he decided to ask her permission first next time. He thought this would happen the next time they met. The young lady noticed his smile and asked why he was so happy. The gentleman explained that he was happy to be with her and added that she had a gift for making people feel comfortable. The girl said that he was a master of compliments, and he replied that he had never heard of such a thing. When they entered the shop, the clerk greeted the gentleman and asked what he was looking for with the young lady. Sturmel replied that they wanted to look at paints, then introduced the lady as the owner of the shop, Kartal. The owner kissed the girl's hand, and she expressed delight at meeting him. He then told her he had many beautiful paintings, thanked her for her kind words, and added that most of the works were by young artists, usually ignored by aristocrats. Kartal suggested that the lady go up to the second floor, where materials were sold. On this floor, the main character was able to find blue dye from the south and a charcoal pencil from the Principality of Frozen. The young gentleman watched her and realized she was enjoying herself, which meant their visit had been a success. Then they went upstairs. The nanny remained downstairs, wondering who had attracted Mrs. Riken's attention, and noting that Sir Sturmel Raft was, after all, an illegitimate son. She couldn't understand why the master and mistress had allowed their meeting. When the girl saw the new canvases and tools, she was amazed at how beautiful everything looked. She asked the gentleman if he painted or sculpted. Sturmel admitted he'd never painted. He'd come to look at the paintings on the first floor, which piqued his interest. She was surprised and asked why he'd come there, to which he replied it was for magic. The young man explained that among waterbenders, there are those who don't sense their powers if multiple streams flow through them simultaneously. Adding dye to one of the streams helps differentiate them. Kartal turned to Sir, reminding him that he was interested in painting and had come for a sketchbook and pencils the previous week. The young gentleman said he wanted to make sketches, but he felt he lacked talent, so it was pointless to show them. The lady asked if she could see them, but he declined. Sturmel noted that Lady Riken attended art class and was a good artist, offering to show her her work later. She admitted she doubted her abilities, to which he reassured her that this was normal. The owner asked if it wasn't enough for a mage to be good at magic, and suggested that if he captured streams of water on canvas, people would line up to buy such paintings. The young gentleman objected that random mixing of colors without intention could not be called art. Kartal offered to look at the works, reminding him that he knew the philosophy of drawing, and asked why he had come today. Sturmel explained that he wanted to study several shades of purple to test their interaction with water. The young lady asked about a cufflink without gemstones. He explained that he had used magical stones, and last time they had all disappeared, so he was going to insert new ones. A magic stone is a mage's primary tool for storing mana. Each mage uses this differently, usually through items from which mana can be instantly extracted. The main character remembered that her daughter also created a magical weapon from a pocket watch, but rarely used it due to her low mana reserves. Riken said she had several shades of purple, wondered if she had enough water, and asked for brushes and paper, which she planned to buy later. The guy wanted to give her a brush, but she insisted on choosing it herself, since she had never bought the materials herself before. When the girl began to paint, she noted with delight that she really liked the paint, more transparent than amethyst and brighter than purple jade. The young lady wondered if it was possible to find jewels of similar shades, but realized that they were very rare. The lady informed Sir Sturmel that the paint changes color when mixed with water, and added that she did not know which one would be suitable for creating magic stones. The young gentleman said he'd like to show it to you, but there weren't enough materials. He explained that he needed plenty of clean water and promised to show it to you tomorrow or the day after at the mage's tower. The girl almost forgot to return the bird to him and offered to take it, but he refused, saying that it was now her thing. The guy explained that the bird was made of crystal and could be used as a decoration or a paper holder. Kartal approached the lady and noted that the magical water items were incredibly beautiful and that such exquisite creations were rare. Riken asked the gentleman if he had any magical items, since he ran an art shop. He replied that he was more interested in jewelry than magic, and inquired whether magical items were often purchased for decoration. The owner explained that some magical items have already served their purpose and can be used as parts for something new, which makes them useful. Kartal asked the mage if he'd considered creating some magical items, and said he could ask permission to sell them at the mage tower. The young man replied that he was a mage, not a jeweler, and that there was no point in talking about selling items. Sturmel explained to the lady how to use magic. Roll up a note, place it in the bird's beak, and release it. The bird will return to him, and this way, short messages can be conveyed. He also provides her with everything she needs for drawing. Riken, surprised, says she can't accept such an incredible thing. The young master replies that it's too conspicuous and therefore can't be used for anything important. Then he says that while the bird may look beautiful, it's practically useless. The girl claims that even if this is true, she considers it too expensive. He explains that he's not giving her some incredible magical weapon, as the bird only has one function. Therefore, when she's not using it, the bird will be just a decoration. The young gentleman asks if she doesn't like it. The girl objects and replies that she likes it, but considers it too valuable. The magician says that if she doesn't need it, she can just return it, and he'll use it for paper. The main character thought that later, after a few months, she could simply thank her and return her. The shop owner says he's so glad the gentlemen were able to buy everything they needed. Then he says that since they've come to this street, they should take a stroll along it. He then tells them that at the east end of the street is the Rosenthal Gallery, and they should stop in because it has some amazing works. Kartal explains that there's an exhibition about the Andor myth there, and suggests they go there once. The guy explains that they'll have to walk then, and asks the lady must be tired, and also thinks Miss Rode won't be happy about it. The salesman says it's okay if they take a little stroll. Then he says the miss can stay with him, and he'll treat her to tea. He says he has some exotic tea, and asks if she'd like a cup. The nanny asks if it's expensive. The man replies that it is, and that's why he's treating her. The young lady realized the nanny was staying behind and said they would be back soon. The nanny suggested they not go too far and then informed them that if they weren't back in an hour, she would come for them. As they descend the stairs, Riken says Mr. Kartal is a good chatterbox, but she thinks her nanny is also stubborn and always very attentive. The guy says he's like a friend who knows exactly what someone needs. The girl says that's not all she's smiling about, and at that moment she thought about how much fun it was walking down the street. The young lady realized that all the paintings for sale in the shop were painted by ordinary artists. The magician offered to look at them a little longer, and she agreed. The main character says she prefers this because master paintings can always be seen in a gallery, and they hang in the most prominent place in every aristocrat's home. Suddenly, the young lady saw a drawing Rodrigo had made, and she realized he would become a world-famous artist within 20 years. But because his name became known after his death, His works spread throughout the world. The Countess understands that there have only been a few cases where names have become world famous, and she is surprised that his work sells so easily. The stranger says it's just a sketch that can't be hung in the house, so it was brought here. He then says the painting isn't worthy of such a noble lady's attention. Riken asks how much it costs. He replies that the lady can give at least 1 silver coin. Hearing this, the main character thought that a painting that you can't buy for any amount of money can be sold for such a price in 20 years. Sturmel turns to the lady and says that he will buy her, and says that she thought of it as a souvenir from the Enzola Street. The young master says that if she thinks of it as a gift for a lady, her mother will not be angry. The girl says she thinks 1 silver coin is very cheap, and asks if he can buy it back for 2 silver coins. He replies that even that would be too little for her gift. The guy bought this painting, and the girl says she wants to meet their artist and says to tell him to come to Viscount Copeland's house. The young man was surprised to hear this, but the lady said he should ask Riken Kaplan, and she would warn the butler of his visit. She then informed him that if he came to her, he would receive a monetary reward. The stranger says that Rodrigo will be happy until death, and then thank the lady. Sturmel asks the girl if she'd like to sponsor this artist. She replies that she thinks it would be interesting, and she thinks this is someone who will definitely be successful. The protagonist reflects on how sad it is that the great artist will never see his success and has lived in poverty his entire life. And she realizes that even if she can't fully support him, she can at least help with the cost of materials. The young gentleman says that if it brings her pleasure, then all is well, because he considers it a true blessing for this artist. Then he says he doesn't think they'll have enough time to go to the Rosenthal Gallery. The Countess says they don't have to go then. She says that if it's as Mr. Cartel said, then the exhibits are outstanding works, and she thinks they'll have another chance to visit. The lady says she doesn't much like what's usually called a masterpiece, because most of them are too outstanding and noble. The guy agrees and says that, come to think of it, he too has never liked what everyone calls famous works of art. Riken asks which painting he liked best among the ones he's seen. He replies that he doesn't know, as it was untitled, and the painting itself is an acquired taste. He then explains that he's only recently become interested in art, and that the Cartel's influence is incredible. At that moment, the girl realized her leg was bothering her. The guy noticed she was having trouble walking and asked if her legs were tired, as they'd been walking for quite a while. She replied that everything was fine. The lady says it would be nice to relax a bit in a cafe. However, the girl realizes the nanny is waiting for them, and the weather is not great. Sturmel tells her not to worry about the weather. Then he says they might be a little late, but he's prepared for Miss Rod to scold him. He can't let her go any further knowing her legs are sore. The young gentleman asks the lady if she would like coffee. She says she does, as she doesn't drink it often. The girl sat down on a chair, then took off her shoes, thinking that if she rested a bit, she could walk to Mr. Cartel's shop. And she reflected that from there it wasn't that far to the cart. The main character thought that she had the feeling that just by sitting here, she had become one with these people from Enzola Street. The guy says he borrowed a cape because it's already cold. Then he says they have specialty coffee, so he ordered it, but he'll have to wait a bit. She replies that everything is fine, since she's not that thirsty. Sturmel asks if she drinks coffee often. The lady replies that everyone in their house usually drinks tea. She's heard that coffee isn't good for your health, but she thinks 1 cup is fine. The lady asks if he drinks coffee often. The magician explains that it's a very popular drink in the magician's tower. Because people can't open their eyes without it, the tower owner's fairy takes a pot of coffee and flies around every room in the morning. The young gentleman explains that this is a very dark and rich coffee, hence its nickname, Hell's Mud. Hearing this, the girl is surprised and asks how one can drink it with such a name. The main character recalls that her daughter also drank coffee until late at night and then stayed awake all night. Sturmel asks if she knows a mage. The protagonist is surprised to hear this question, then replies no. She says she thinks she's a little tired. The young gentleman suggests they have some coffee and go back, as it's getting a bit chilly outside. The coffee arrived within minutes. The guy said they drew it with milk foam. Then he explained that the designs were created with something resembling a hairpin. At this point, the Countess realized that her daughter loved coffee, and she even set up a coffee machine at home to brew it herself. Later, she even taught the servants how to do it. However, the servants' skills were incredible, and she even learned to make designs out of foam. The main character remembered that her daughter made a mistake every time, and the whole cup became dirty. The young gentleman looked at the pensive girl and asked what she was thinking. She apologized, and he said she had nothing to apologize for. Sturmel says he sometimes feels like she's staring off into the distance. She counters, explaining that she's simply preoccupied and seems distracted. He insists that's not what he meant. The magician touches the lady's hand and says she's cold. The girl explains it's just a little chilly. The guy says he'd appreciate it if she'd focus more on him. Riken says Sir Sturmel is very kind to her. He explains that it's not politeness, and thinks she sees him as too nice a man. Then he asserts that he's not the type to waste his time on those he has no interest in. The young gentleman says he's courting her. And this isn't just politeness, he wants to say he's interested in her. The girl addresses him and calls him Sturmel. He objects and suggests that she simply call him Sturver, as he believes that would be better. Riken says she thinks it's going to rain soon, and she reminds him that the nanny is waiting for them. The guy says Miss Rod will understand if it starts raining, and then he touches her hand. The main character recalled that in a past life, she also dated a couple of potential suitors, and that this was a significant turning point in her life. However, she believes that this means nothing to the high society. The young lady understands that it's common for a viscount's daughter to marry the man her father chooses for her after a few meetings. However, she suspects that if Sir Sturmel's name were to surface among the potential suitors, she wonders if she could overcome it as if nothing had happened. The Countess doesn't know if she'll be able to forget, or if she'll have the strength to tell her daughter about it. Smiling and calling him her first love, the protagonist considered ending everything right now, since she wouldn't be able to change anything later. But she realized she wished she'd been bolder than before, but hadn't even considered going so far. She believed she could harm this herald later. The maid informs her mistress that a guest has come to see her. She asks who it is. Penny replies that it's the artist she asked to come. Then she reminds her that she told her about him herself, as the butler might have forgotten and sent him away. Riken remembered and offered to take him to the reception area so he could wait for her. And then she thought about how she was a little more capable than they thought, and she'd get ready in no time. At this point, the artist sitting in the living room looked at the painting and thought that it was 100 years old. He couldn't understand how someone who had something like this hanging in their home could possibly like his drawing. The guy hopes that whoever bought his strange painting won't scold him. Then he looked at the snacks that the servant too brought and thought that it was so delicious since he had been very hungry lately. When Rodrigo saw Mrs. Toe, he greeted her and said that she had been looking for him. The girl says she's Riken Copeland and asks him to sit down. He suggests she speak to him in any way she feels comfortable with. She replies that everything is fine and tells him not to worry. The lady says she saw his painting and it impressed her. The guy says she paid a lot of money for it. Riken says she'd like to buy a couple more paintings from the artist. She then says that while her contribution won't be as large, she'd still like to sponsor him. The artist, surprised to hear this, said he was not worthy of receiving help from the noble lady, since he did not know what she liked about his paintings. The lady explains that she likes his work, which she draws in a sketchbook with paints or a brush. She then adds that her hobby is drawing, but she knows a little about art. And just by looking at them, the main character feels that they contain incredible technique and emotions that cannot be captured without innate talent. Hearing this, the artist doesn't understand what kind of praise this is. The lady says that their family lives comfortably, but they are not particularly rich. The main character explains that the painting tools are bought with pocket money, and believes that while she'd like to become a sponsor, it wouldn't be an exorbitant sum. She'd rather invest in his paintings. The girl says that she will make arrangements with Mr. Cartel's shop on Rosenthal Street. If he needs anything, he can simply buy it in her name. Rodrigo thanks the lady and says that for her sake he will certainly create outstanding works of art. Then he asks if there's anything else he could do for her. The lady says he doesn't need to feel burdened. He informs her that in the future he will have several more sponsors, much more influential than her. And when he becomes famous, he should honor her by calling her his first sponsor. The main character wrote the agreement and asked the butler to deliver it to Mr. Cartel's shop. He thought in surprise, unable to believe that the mistress was sponsoring someone. Suddenly, the father approached his daughter and asked if he had disturbed her. She asked how that could be, and then explained that she wasn't busy with anything anyway. Her father asks if she's hanging the painting. She replies that she received it as a gift from the artist. And then she thinks about how she's become the owner of the Evening Dawn. As soon as Mr. Rodrigo returned home, he took the painting and handed it to the butler. And she realized that the painting, Evening Dawn, was Rodrigo's immortal masterpiece, which could not be valued in money. The mistress tells the maid that this is too large a gift in return for her help. The maid says that even so, she doesn't think it's best not to return it. Then she says she's heard this man's work doesn't often sell. She wonders if the mistress returning it will hurt the artist. The father asks the girl if she likes this painting. She asks if her father likes it. He replies that he's not sure, but he understands that the colors are beautiful. The girl says she doesn't think there will be any important guests in the music room, so everything is fine. Dad says it's her space and tells her to do as she pleases. The man says he was a little surprised to hear from the butler that she was planning to sponsor an unknown artist. She assures him it's just a small donation. Dad says that since she's already started, it's incredible, as few people think about such things at such a young age. The young lady asks if he's busy right now. Dad replies that he has time to have a cup of tea with his daughter. Riken says she will walk him to his office and make them some tea. Her father asks her if she enjoyed her walk with Sir Sturmel. He then tells her he was a little worried because he's not exactly a friendly person. However, the girl counters, saying that Sir Sturmel was very polite. Hearing this, the man thought that they hadn't simply gone for a walk and bought drawing materials, but as a father, he couldn't simply interfere in his daughter's affairs. However, he believed it would be best for Riken not to see him again. Sir Sturmel is a powerful mage who controls water and air. Water magic can cause droughts and floods. Due to the cyclical nature of the process, the effects can last for a long time. Even a ruler can't be careless with waterbenders, but Lord Raft can also manipulate air. And father understands that Sir Sturmel is a dangerous man who could cause natural disasters. The main character asks her father how he met this mage, knowing that their family is not close to the Marquis Raft family, nor her mother's either. She understands that the Raft family is far removed from politics and believes they have nothing to do with his work. Riken asks her dad what's wrong with him, because she sees him looking at her with surprise. The gentleman explains that he simply realized his daughter was of marriageable age because she had grown so much. He understands that his daughter had always been a very sensible child, and she still analyzes everything that happens around her. The young lady suggests to her father that he shouldn't say such a thing. Then she says she'll make some tea. The gentleman says he met Sir Sturmel through work, and asks if she knows the Orphan territory in the south. He says that 3 years ago, a dam in the center of the river collapsed there. It was a major disaster back then. Father says that Caden, who is the manager of Orphan, is his friend from the academy, and he contacted him and asked him to urgently find a water mage. At this point, the Lord realized this was a major problem, as he had to formally request the mage tower. He knew that if the dam collapsed further, it would cause great damage to the village, and besides, the rainy season was approaching. When Copeland arrived at the mage's tower, he was told there were currently no available mages. He explained that the Orphan couldn't resolve the issue on their own, and they had even requested assistance from the capital. The chief mage claims that there is nothing they can do and suggests trying to talk to Sir Sturmel personally. There was much going on in the mage's tower, and the master couldn't simply go to Sir Sturmel and ask him for such a thing. After all, he had graduated with honors from the academy and was still known as the young man who had become a water lord at such a young age. But he wondered if such a genius would be willing to help him. The father says that he was actually worried before meeting him because he understood that without his powers he would have to find another way. However, Mr. Sturmel turned out to be a good man. He understood that since they had contacted him, it must be something very important. He also said he wanted to leave right away. The father asked if he needed time to prepare. The magician replied no, since the water wouldn't harm him. The master realized that thanks to this magician, they were able to avoid serious losses. Hearing this, the main character realized what had happened and said she hadn't even known it. And then she remembered that when her father died, the duke's assistant, Sagna, came to offer his condolences. At this time, the girl thought that he had come to formally convey consolation because the master had sent him. The father explains that they are slightly acquainted, but not close. And he understands that this magician is an outstanding man, a little cold in appearance, yet very noble in his treatment of those in need. Riken says he's not very good at showing emotions. Her father says he thought so too. Then he asks if something happened. The girl assures him everything is fine. The gentleman says that if she wants it, he won't mind. Hearing this, the daughter asks what he's talking about. The father explains that if he truly makes her happy, he won't mind Sir Sturmel. The father says that the mother will definitely be against it, but he believes that his daughter's happiness is more important. However, he understands that he must prove that he will take care of her. The nanny informs her mistress that she has received a letter. Upon seeing it, the girl thinks it was written by Sir Sturmel. The nanny says she must show this letter to her, as it is her mother's decree. Because, be that as it may, she is worried about her. The young gentleman wrote that because of the cold rain yesterday, he was worried that the lady might have caught a cold. He then asked for forgiveness for his stupidity, as he would be sorry if their meeting was postponed due to her illness. Sturmel writes that he remembers his promise to show her how to create a magical weapon, and so he sends her an invitation to the mage's tower. And in response to the lavender petals she sent him, he added a floral scent to the letter. And then he says he will await her reply. When the nanny read the letter, she realized there was absolutely nothing to complain about. She then asked the girl if she knew she needed permission from her mother to visit the mage's tower. Penny tells the girl not to worry, then informs her that she's giving her a massage because a mistress needs to look her best. She says she'll wash her in rose water and apply a cucumber and honey mask. The main character asks the maid if she's not offering all this because she wants to do it herself. Then she claims she's in love and asks who it is. Hearing this, the maid blushed and said she couldn't say it yet. The mistress asked if she was afraid she would separate them if she told him. She suggested telling him what kind of person he was, and nothing more. Penny says the head servant introduced them to each other and thinks he is an ordinary man who sells fruits and vegetables on a Lindo street and supplies them to their kitchen. Riken tells her that since he's dating her, he must be young. The maid explains that he's not actually that young, but a little older. The main character recalls that the year she married the herald, Penny, she also unexpectedly became engaged, quit her job, and left the capital. It was only 20 years later that she heard all about Penny from her nanny. However, she was unable to find out whether the maid was happy with her husband, where they lived, or what kind of man he was. But the girl was certain of one thing. Penny didn't want to quit her job. And at that moment, she thought about the maid marrying the man she was currently dating, and she wondered if she should stop it. The maid asks what's wrong with Mistress Yi, thinking it must be because of the age difference. Mistress hugs the girl and thinks she's worried about her. Riken thought about how, according to Penny, the head maid introduced them, and she thought it was necessary to check out his personality. She also assumed that since he was supplying them with food, his business was successful. The mistress tells the maid they can make facial masks and adds that she still needs to massage her face. Penny suggests relying on her, as she knows a secret massage technique from the Principality of Belita. If blood flow is improved, dark circles under the eyes will disappear. The maid says that she will prepare everything and come, and therefore invites the mistress to rest a little in the room. The main character looked at her and thought how nice it would be if she were always this happy. And she realized that if she could help her before she got married, she would do everything she could. The girl believes she should find out more about her future husband because she wants to know how this child will live once she gets married. Penny tells the mistress that this time she will give her a massage around her face. Then she says that she will apply gentle pressure to her body, and if it hurts, she should tell her. A few minutes later, the main character looked at herself in the mirror and saw a red face, and said that she thought it looked fresher. The maid asks how about tidying up her hair again. She says she heard about an effective method from other servants. The main character is surprised to hear this, then says she's already combed and put away her hair. Penny insists that before combing you need to apply a little scented oil. Then she asks if she has any rose oil, which is used in baths. The maid explains that she should apply it to the ends of her hair and comb them. She then says that if she does this, her hair will be long and beautiful, and when the mistress passes by, the scent of roses will waft from her. Penny offers to do it to the lady. She replies that she can't. And then she thinks that, looking at her, she sees her daughter, and she even wants to do it. Riken says the penny is incredible. The lady took the letter and thought about how the faint scent of lavender flowers and a warm spring day still lingered. The protagonist wondered if Sir Stemmel had always been so considerate of those close to him, and she speculated that Duke Sagna had been like that in the past, as she had heard, and it was hard to call him the kind of person who creates problems, and so she never heard anything bad about his relationship with his wife. However, there was also no talk of them being fine. Some gossiped behind his wife's back that she was incapable of capturing his heart. Others said that Duke Sagna had no interest in women. But one thing is clear: he never became intimate with any of them. The Duke respected his wife and was always courteous to her, but they were strangely cold to each other. And if you look at it that way, it was a typical marriage of convenience. That's why the main character felt he wouldn't be so kind to her. After all, she knew his character from the past. And she understood that she should respond, not keep him waiting. The assistant informs the master that he has received a letter from Viscount Capland, and then he informs him that a guest has come to see him. Hearing this, the young gentleman thought that he was not expecting anyone and was saying this. Mr. Copeland says he came so suddenly and perhaps crossed a line to some extent, since this is the first time he's barged in uninvited like this. And then he says he's glad to meet. Stürmel insists the tea isn't very good and isn't worthy of his guest. The gentleman says he only wanted to briefly discuss some business with him and asks him not to bother too much. The silver-haired man asks him what business he has come to him about. The gentleman replies that he received orders from the emperor to convey the following to him. He then shows him a precious stone and says it is a gift from the emperor. The young gentleman says it's a brooch. The count explains that it's encrusted with a blue diamond so rare that it's unattainable for money. The gentleman says that perhaps even aristocrats have never seen things of such a rich color. Then he asks if the brooch isn't beautiful. He insists that it suits him perfectly. Stürmel asks in surprise why the emperor sent him a gift so suddenly. The gentleman replies that it's no coincidence and that His Majesty has probably thought it all through. He then says that he cares for him. The young gentleman says that, after so many years, he has finally decided to take care of his illegitimate child, and he thinks he must be beside himself. The boy explains that this man never visited him while he was growing up. He seems to think he was happy to see him achieve something. He then says that His Majesty probably would never have come to see him if he hadn't become Lord of the Mage Tower. Stürmel tells him to take the gift back. Then he leaves and apologizes. Before setting the date for the visit to the Mage's Tower, the main character exchanged several letters with the mage, and this took a week. As Riken approached the Mage Tower, she reflected on how she had come here in the past because of her daughter's excursion. And she believes that's why it doesn't seem so unfamiliar or surprising to her. After that day, the main character met Sir Stürmel for the first time. He greeted the lady and said he would escort her. The red-haired man announces that he is the water mage Gerald Maximo and Sir Stürmel's apprentice. The lady says she is pleased to meet him. Gerald kisses the girl's hand and says he now understands what she looks like, the one who left his callous master so tender. Then he says he has no words to describe how beautiful she is. Hearing this, the girl became embarrassed and said he wasn't like that. The young gentleman then told her to ignore him. Then he turned to Gerald and told him to always maintain decorum in front of polite people. Riken says there's some unspoken rule. He explains that there's no need to be formal with those he's close to. The master says he's prepared everything in the garden for the creation of a magical weapon. However, first he suggests going somewhere, as he wants to visit the mage's tower. Gerald turns to the nanny and says he will accompany her. She agrees. The mage says that because of spatial magic, the tower appears much taller than ordinary buildings, and it's very easy for ordinary people to get lost. Then he says that even if he's a mage and doesn't belong to the mage tower, he won't be able to get inside. And guests are rare. The girl looked at him in surprise and said a ladder had appeared. He explained that the latter was created out of thin air. But since he was nearby, the lady needn't worry. The main character saw that the stairs she was walking on had begun to disappear. She then asked if there was anyone else. The young gentleman explains that they are the only ones in this space right now, and no one usually moves like this, as everyone has their own path. The magician says there are currently about 400 rooms in this tower. They're all quite large, so they won't be able to visit them all in one day. Gerald says he usually writes down coordinates and uses spatial magic. The main character asks in surprise if they shouldn't have used that method back then. Upon hearing this, the young gentleman admits it was his mistake. Riken asks if her nanny is lost. Shdermal says that since Gerald is nearby, nothing bad will happen. Then he says he'll ask him. The magician asks what other mistake could there be, and then claims that nothing can be done, and offers to bring the miss safe and sound to the office. The main character asks what happened. Shdermal tells her not to worry. Then he explains that there's a space called the Room of Infinite Mirrors of Light, and he said they're there. The girl asks what kind of room this is. He replies that mages of light and darkness use it for practice, and once a person enters it, it will take them 2 hours to get out. The master says that since this room is for practice, other magicians have not heard about it at all. After all, Gerald is a water magician. The main character realized her nanny would be there for about 2 hours. The young gentleman explained that if she were considering a tour of the mages tower, that room would be the perfect place. Shdermal reflected on the fact that Gerald had been in the mage's tower for 4 years already, and therefore believed he couldn't have made such a mistake by accident. He also believed he most likely did it on purpose, justifying it out of concern for him. The young lady insists that everything is fine, even though the nanny always speaks sternly, but in the end, she pretends that everything is fine and nothing happened. The magician says that if he doesn't want to ruin her opinion of himself, he must make sure she has a good time. Then he reveals that he's actually a little pleased. The guy says he heard the lady decided to sponsor an unknown artist, and then tells him what the Karthal told him. He also asks if this is the artist whose painting she bought during her walk. The main character says that this artist's work is rarely recognized, but she sees a special beauty in it, and she really liked the painting he gave her. The girl says that the colors are intense, the brushstrokes are dynamic, and he didn't try to capture the moment, and it seems to her that he put into the painting the feelings of the person looking at it. Riken asks if he said something about his favorite painting being the work of some amateur artist. He replies that he is correct. The main character says she's curious about this piece and asks if he has it. He replies that he doesn't have it and wanted to buy it but was told it wasn't for sale. Shdermal asks the lady if she's in an art class, and maybe she knows. Then he says that last year, while he was waiting for someone, he had the chance to check out her class's exhibit. There the young gentleman saw a painting of blue flowers, and although he wasn't sure whether it was correct to call them blue or purple, he believed they were an extraordinary color. Hearing this, the protagonist thought it might be her painting. She recalls hearing the news from a broker, but she didn't sell it. However, the fact that someone wanted to buy it made her feel proud. And as it turned out, that someone was Sir Shdermal. The young gentleman tells the girl that now they will need to make a dash, and then asks her to allow him to put his arm around her. The main character asks if he said they were going to the garden. He replies that's where that door leads. Seeing this, the young lady thought it was an ordinary forest. Then she said it looked quite unusual. The young master said the best place for a nature mage to practice is in nature itself. Shdermal explains that this was originally a forest in the southern Eld, but then part of it was blocked off to create a passage to the mages' tower. And the first earth mages from the tower are in charge of this place. The girl says this place is incredibly beautiful. The guy agrees and says he thinks so too. Shdermal says they will create a magical weapon on this lake, because when a large amount of clean water is needed, this place is ideal. The magician reports that there are a lot of people in the capital, so it is impossible to waste water unwisely. He believes that it is easiest to control the boomerang effect here. Riken looked at the lake and thought about how the water had risen in the blink of an eye. She wondered if there was enough water for the paint. Suddenly, a purple stone appeared in the guy's hand. The girl, surprised, asks if she can touch it, and when she takes it in her hand, she asks if he uses it for cufflinks. The main character says that there's water from the lake inside him, and that's why she finds it so amazing. The young gentleman explains that he's a water mage. The young lady says she doesn't know much about magic, but she's certain that regular waterbending isn't capable of such a feat. He explains that he simply has far more mana than others. Sturmel says he can use magic so freely because they're inside the mage tower. But in truth, casting magic isn't all that difficult. He claims that with proper preparation and the necessary equipment, there's practically nothing impossible in magic. The guy says that outside the tower, talent is usually defined as being able to use magic with even minimal training. And for Togo, the specifics of the magic, the mage's ability to grasp it on the fly, and the amount of mana are important. The young master explains that resourcefulness and the amount of mana he possesses are what ordinary people call a magical talent. And if she prepares and knows everything, she can do whatever her heart desires. He believes it simply requires careful preparation. Sturmel says that the Mage Tower is an isolated place, so every change can be regulated here. Riken says she thought magic was too distant and incomprehensible. But after listening to him, it turned out to be so interesting and captivating. And then she tells him she still has so many things she needs to learn and try. The guy says that's why people in the magician's tower always study and walk around with books. Suddenly, the girl saw a snake. The master told her not to be afraid and then informed her that it was a messenger. The snake asks if they have already made a magical weapon and then suggests returning to the office. Gerald disguised himself as a messenger. He asks if it would not be quicker for Sir Sturmel to bring the lady here than for him to come here with the missus. The gentleman suggests not rushing him, or he's afraid he'll go the wrong way. He replies that it's not he who's rushing him, but the lady. He says he's scared and suggests he come faster. Riken announces that they are already on their way. She asks Sir Sturmel if he will show her his office. The young gentleman replies that she is mistaken and reminds her that he asked her to call him simply Chaubert, and then he asks if it's difficult. The lady replies that it's not difficult. After that, their meetings continued, and the main character didn't even know there were so many beautiful places in the capital. Sheeter says he didn't know either and explains that Gerald prepared a list of places and believes he was a great help. He explains that he's been in the tower all the time and hasn't really gone anywhere. He was worried about whether he could accompany her properly. Hearing this, the young lady was surprised. Then she said she wanted to ask him a favor, and said that on the day he invited her to the mage's tower, when she met him, he was sad, and she wondered what had happened to him. The boy replies that a close confidant of the emperor visited him that day. He believes that His Majesty was the one who had never acknowledged knowing him or his mother. And when word spread that he was gifted and had become Lord of the Mage's Tower, he greeted him, sending someone else. The young gentleman reports that he sent his confidant back along with the gift he had given, and then he reports that that's how it all ended. Sheeter says he can't even imagine where the power that runs in his blood will lead him. The main character turns to him and says she probably won't be able to help him much. However, she will always be able to listen to him, and so she offers to sometimes share his fears. When they came into the office, the girl read all the places they had visited today, and she said there was a lot written there. The lady reports that, in truth, her friends have told her about half of what's here. They said to be sure to tell her if there's a place she wants to go. The young man says it's the season between winter and fall, and he doesn't think there's anywhere worth visiting at this time. But he thinks it might be possible next spring. Sturmel says the 4 seasons are constantly changing, so he's been thinking ahead about where to go next spring. And he's sure she'll love it. Hearing this, the protagonist agreed and thought that this day probably wouldn't come next year. She wondered if she could be happy instead of spending her days thinking about how much she missed her daughter. The girl wonders if everything will be all right if she enjoys the feelings and her heart flutters. She believes that when he's around her, she forgets that she's a mother. The young lady doesn't understand, but for some reason she feels as if she's sinned by thinking about her daughter next to Sir Shader, and so she decides not to finish the painting. Riken understands that there was no reason for her to necessarily finish it. However, looking at this work, she began to miss her daughter. The main character looked at the painting that Sir Stonner liked and thought that perhaps she should give it to him as a parting gift. But she understands that there should be no attachment left. The young lady realizes that there is no one who can ask her why she is acting irresponsibly. Penny informs her mistress that the time has come. The lady agrees to go with her. The maid says she'll change the water. Riken says that she will do it herself and suggests that she go after the coachman and ask him to load the painting, since she finished it long ago. The maid, surprised, asks if she's taking the painting home. Then she says she'll call her right away. The maid asks if her mistress is going to Mrs. Polana's house today. Then she asks if she must have been preparing for a long time. Penny believes she even budgeted time to go home and change. Lady says that if it were a regular meeting, she could have done just that, but today she has a tea ceremony. The maid asks if there will be any men there. She replies that there will be 5 or 6 girls, so there will be about the same number of men. Penny asks if it would be okay if she went there with Sir Sturmel. The lady replies that it's just a tea ceremony, and she's not even a couple with him. Then she asks what about her, since she never told Penny about that fruit and vegetable vendor last time. She replies that everything is fine, and they see each other every weekend. The maid explains that he treats her very well. Hearing this, the protagonist says she can rest easy. The maid thanks her for her concern. Riken tells the maid that if she doesn't like something, she should definitely tell her. She agrees. The tea ceremony at Polana's house was organized by the cold-blooded Olivia, wife of Viscount Eugene and Polana's sister. And when the main character entered the house, she thought that there were no men yet. The girl wondered why Count Wayne's daughter was here, and she realized that none of her close friends were in this house. Countess Wayne and the aristocrats gathered here had different statuses. Riken greeted Viscountess Eugene and thanked her for the invitation. The lady asks the girl what this sudden greeting is. Hearing this, the protagonist thinks that she's still friends with Polana, and therefore believes she must be close to her sister Olivia. The Count's daughter invites the girl to sit down, since the treats are so delicious. The young lady says she's a little late, and asks if she missed anything exciting. The Countess asks if she means gossip, and then says that she doesn't think she's heard the story of the Empress's sufferings. At this time, the main character remembered that the Empress, after that, once fell ill, and somewhere over the course of a year her condition sometimes improved, sometimes worsened, and eventually she died. And 8 months later, His Majesty appointed Lady Cyrional, Sturmel's mother, as the new Empress. This was to put Sir Sturmel's title in order, before the ceremony of granting the title of Empress Isaria took place. The Emperor's remarriage and new title of Duke overlapped with the ceremony of bestowing the title of Crown Empress, so the entire country was enveloped in a festive atmosphere, and at that moment the main character thought it wouldn't affect her at all. After all, she was too young and lacked experience to understand the full gravity of the situation. Riken was focused solely on the fact that her first love had become a duke. However, she understands that things are much different now, as she is no longer a naive young woman. The main character believes that now she can understand the Empress, who was so far from her in the past. The Empress has mental health issues, and Princess Rasold, even after her engagement to His Majesty, knew absolutely nothing about the history of Her Majesty and Lady Cyrional. The Empress asks if Lady Raph's son is His Majesty's son. The lady replies that it is. Then she asks if she hasn't heard anything. The Empress was completely unaware that the two had an illegitimate child. She only learned of Sir Sturmel's existence a year after the princess's birth. Cyrional said the child had no father. She insisted she was raising him alone. The Empress wanted to meet her, so she sent a letter to Raph. But instead of a positive response, she received a polite refusal. Cyrional wrote that she had given birth to a child before marriage, thereby tarnishing the family's honor. Therefore, she does not enter high society and dares not approach the Empress. She also cordially asks for understanding. If Cyrional hadn't been so remarkable, she wouldn't have escaped hatred. That's what made her so strong. The Empress became Empress of Eld by virtue of her title of princess. Due to diplomatic relations, she could not openly criticize His Majesty. Whatever the reason, throughout the entire country, she had no one to whom she could open her soul. Having strayed from Her Majesty's path, hatred and resentment built up over time. Eventually, she fell ill. The protagonist reflected that those who made mistakes suffered no harm, while only those abandoned suffered. The Countess asked Lady Riken if she had not heard the news from Sir Sturmel that the Empress was ill. The lady replies that he's not the one to tell her about such a thing. And at that moment, she thinks he can't share such things with her so easily. She thinks he must be reluctant to get involved with the imperial family. The main character understands that Sir Sturmel does not want the title, nor the power, nor the recognition of His Majesty. The hostess says that the tea has already cooled down, and then says that she will ask for hot water and some more snacks. The woman says she thinks the men have arrived. Then she turns to her husband. He tells her not to get up and just continue the conversation. The gentleman says that while they were gone, someone else arrived, and then says that he will see how well they are having a good time for the first time in a long time. Riken saw the guy and asked if he was Gerald. Hearing the name, he asked in surprise if she knew him. At this time, the main character realized that she had said something wrong, and then explains that she thinks they met in the house of Baron Roland, and she thinks he's such a bright man who loves guests. And she says her name is Reichen of the Viscounty of Copeland. The guy says he's the herald of the barony of Hadley. He then apologizes, saying he was a bit careless and forgot to introduce himself. The girl tells him not to worry, as she believes there is no need for formal greetings. The main character remembered that in the past, she first met Gerald a few months after graduation when she turned 20 years old. And at that time the girl realized that they had seen each other much earlier than they should have. Riken approaches Deborah and tells her it's time to go. Upon seeing her, the woman says she really does look unwell and asks what's hurting her. The woman insists everything is fine and thanks her for her concern. The protagonist thought that Gerald remembered nothing at all about the past, and she saw his eyes and thought they held no interest, and his face, which projected false politeness. The girl felt like he genuinely knew nothing. She recalled that they had lived together for 20 years, and now she couldn't understand what to do if the future, where she was supposed to meet her daughter, changed. Riken thought about what would happen if she couldn't meet this child. Winter soon arrived. The protagonist recalls that when she returned to the past, it was autumn outside, and realizes that although the days were cold, snow will soon fall. The butler asks the lady if she's returned. Then he informs her that her guest, Sir Sturmel, has arrived and has been waiting for her in the music practice room for 3 hours. Hearing this, the main character realized he wasn't the type to show up unannounced. She realized she couldn't help but meet him. However, she had a bad feeling about him. And then the girl went into the room and greeted the gentleman. The young gentleman asks if it was her painting and then says he is surprised. Sturmel says that perhaps she doesn't remember, but he said that this was the painting he wanted to buy when he saw it at an exhibition at the drawing club. The lady replies that she remembers and is glad he liked her. The gentleman says she already knew this then, and then says he would be glad if she told him about it. Shiwer says that since it's her painting, he understands why he liked it so much, because he understands that it's rare to find something special in the world. Riken says they hadn't arranged a meeting and asks what happened, since he'd even waited so long. He replies that he came to meet the Viscount and decided to see her at the same time. The guy says he has important business to attend to and will be returning home early tomorrow morning. Then he tells her he won't be seeing her for a while. The girl asks if he's going home, meaning the raft lands. The boy replies that his mother is there and he wants to taste her. At this point, the protagonist realized she only knew the general outline of his situation, but she believed he was probably in a very difficult situation. Sir Sturmel has known about the Empress's illness for several months, and he likely knew that the Empress had been weakening for some time. At this point, Sheeter thought about how, until he met Lady Riken, he intended to live without the burden of relationships. And he thought this was the best option, since he didn't want to show anyone his fear of the imperial family. That's why, when his mother suggested leaving the capital and returning home, the boy didn't follow her. After all, it seemed to him then that he was creating his own reality, as if he was running away from the imperial family and the people. Mother asked why, and then said she had left the capital on purpose. She wondered if there was any need to cause trouble. The woman says she knows how important his studies are to him, and she knows he can stand up for himself. Then she tells him his strength is completely useless against the mouths of others. Sheeter says people will judge him here and even when he's home. He thinks it would be the opposite if he left the capital so as not to know what people were saying here, and asks how that's different from them simply covering their ears and running away. The young man says he knows full well that his mother abandoned high society and lived in seclusion, avoiding meetings with the empress in order to preserve her nobility. And then he asserts that she never asked him to protect herself in the same way. The son says he has no ties to the imperial family. Then he declares that if he continues to ignore this, His Majesty will soon discover that he is an illegitimate child and has no father, and therefore is not an aristocrat. The guy claims that he is not a simple person, and that is why he does not have a country to which he belongs. The young gentleman recalled that at a very early age he had developed a disgust for the world. He had learned how a fleeting passion could turn his life upside down. He had experienced how love, when it cools, turns to hatred. Shidor understands that even so, the blood coursing through his veins was constantly trying to lead him and his mother in the wrong direction. However, until now, he hadn't paid attention to it and so hadn't even considered receiving the title. The young master lived day and night in his study in the mage's tower, turning his back on the people and the imperial family. He wasn't afraid of the fact that if he had to live like this for the rest of his days, he had no regrets. The boy paid no attention to anything, simply living alone, locked away in the mage's tower. However, something suddenly changed within him. From somewhere within his head, another world began to emerge. The mage understood that a home with warmth and peace, a greenhouse with flowers and a garden planted with trees. He also wanted to hold someone's soft hand and hear the laughter of children. Young master, that someone he wanted to have, had appeared in his life. But not even a few months had passed since he met her. But the wounds he thought would never heal at some point began to heal. He himself doesn't understand it, but apparently there's a limit to how much emotion a person can hold in their heart. Sturmel felt something warm and pleasant fill his heart, and the wounds that leave scars were beginning to fade in an instant. And that's why he wanted to continue spending time with her. The girl's father says he knew this day would come, but he wants his daughter to live a peaceful and happy life. It's not a question of whether the guy can take care of that. Copeland says that in high society, everyone chases titles and status, but his daughter is different. And he doesn't think fame will make her happy. The father tells the boy that his abilities and personal qualities inspire confidence. And so he merely observed, because a good father shouldn't interfere in his daughter's life. The man says he wants to say something, even if it sounds rude. Then he says that in any case, they won't be able to say he's a simple man. The father says his daughter has her own friends and family, and her place in society, and therefore, as Miss Raff's illegitimate son, he's in a less than ideal position. And no matter how much they love each other, he can't allow their union for the sake of Raiken's future. The gentleman says that even if he sorts out his status, it's not clear it will only cause her problems. Then he explains that their family is a simple Viscount family, and they don't have any great power or wealth. The man says he will receive the highest title in the Empire, Duke, and therefore believes they are not equal. He believes their marriage will only bring misfortune to each other. Sturmel says that he is also worried about this, and assures that he will definitely find a solution. Father says he is stubborn. The boy replies that he knows. The magician was informed that he would return for the graduation ceremony. Hearing this, the girl thought she had influenced Sir Shidor's decision. The young gentleman approaches the lady and says that when he returns, he would like to discuss something with her. He then asks if she will wait for him. At this point, the main character thought he was about to confess that he wanted to spend his life with her. And she realized she liked him, and she couldn't shake those feelings. The girl understands that if she takes his hand, she doesn't know what will happen to her beloved daughter. Because once, she thought she was her whole world, and this little girl was her everything. Sturmel asks why she's crying. He also wonders if he's really put her in a difficult position. The lady objects and says that's not true and nothing special. The guy comes closer to the girl and then wipes her tear kisses on the lips. At that moment, the lady thought she could taste tears on his lips, but they were quite sweet, and she realized she couldn't refuse him. The maid asks her mistress if everything is all right. Then she says she heard her crying. The lady replies that everything is fine and suggests she not worry about her. Raiken says she wants to be alone and asks if she will leave her. Mom comes into her daughter's room and tells her it's time for dinner. Then she tells her not to get up because she brought her some food. She claims that if she eats a little, she'll feel as fresh as a pie in the morning. When her daughter had eaten, the woman asked if it was much better when there was at least something in her stomach. The main character remembered that when her daughter was little, she also brought her food herself. And when her daughter grew up, she took care of her. And she thought her daughter had learned this from her, but, as it turned out, she had adopted her mother's habit. Mom asks what happened when she was alone with Sir Sturmel. The girl replies that nothing happened and explains that she is a little confused. The woman asks why she won't look her in the eye. The daughter says she thinks he's going to propose. Mom says he came to meet her dad today, and of course she thought it would happen. But apparently her dad wasn't particularly against it, and in fact, she wasn't either. The woman says that if Sir Sturmel is such an outstanding magician, she believes he will be able to start his own family on his own. And if he is the one who can do it for her, she believes. The daughter objects and says there's no need to try so hard to give her hope. Then she tells him she'll refuse. The girl explains that she was ready for this from the very beginning, because they say that first love never succeeds. Mom says she's doing this because she's against it. The girl insists it's not because of that. She explains that he was originally just a partner for the prom, since she only wanted to remember prom, and reminds him that she said so. Riken says she's already created enough good memories. She tells her mother she knows who he is. She thinks he's not right for her, and she can't afford it. The woman asks if she likes him. Then she asserts that everyone should be in their place, since that is the law of happiness. My daughter says those memories were enough for her, and at that moment she thought that if she really were 19, she would happily jump into those feelings. The young lady understands that if she had nothing to lose, even with her worries about the future, she would choose love. But she considers that by choosing him, she will lose her daughter. The girl believes that no matter what happiness and joy awaits her, if she must choose only one of them, she cannot surrender herself to love. This is understandable since she is a mother. The daughter tells her mother that she will walk her to the bedroom. As they walk down the hallway, she asks her mother if she could be reborn. Would she remarry her father? The woman replies that she would like to have a daughter like her again, and she would like to raise her again, but not give birth to her. Mom asks how she can bear it a second time and says she's terrified even at the thought. The girl says she's a good daughter. The woman claims that even if that's true, there were still many things she couldn't do while raising her, as she was a first-time mother. If she could grow it again, she would do a much better job. Mom says that she really wants to raise his brother again, and his daughter thinks that he is still little and will come to his senses. The girl tells her mother that she wants to live happily and then hugs her. A couple of days later, this time, ladies and gentlemen are invited to Baron Roland's house. Mom says that when she was young, they used to dress them up in old dresses. She tells her daughter she can go and choose whatever she likes. The girl suggests they go together because it will be fun. The woman says that her daughter has a good sense of style, and even if the clothes are uncomfortable, she can turn them into everyday wear, fixing everything. The girl says she'd like a beautiful shawl and parasol. Then she explains that Mariella recently inherited one from her grandmother and came with an oriental silk parasol. Mom says that in her youth, the oriental style was considered inelegant and understands that fashion has changed again. The woman says she heard that Riken met Baron Hadley and asks if it is true. The daughter explains that she met Baron Hadley at the previous tea ceremony. He seemed like a good and decent man to her. She then says she'd like to meet him again. The mother agrees with her daughter and says that if this is what she wants, then so it will be. Then she says she will prepare a place where they can talk. At this point, the main character realized that she couldn't simply stand idly by, because she understood that if she let things slide, the days she believed in would end. The lady considers that if she doesn't manage to meet him, she won't be able to bear it. She'll definitely regret it, and she believes she needs to take action. Riken understands that there's little difference between them and the Hadley barony, and therefore believes she could easily marry him. Because that's how things have been in the past. The barony of Roland. And when the main character arrived, she thought about how many people had already gathered, but she believed that among the young people, only she and Gerald were there. The woman with red hair asks the girl if she is Lady Copeland, and then says that she is all so beautiful and she is glad to meet her. The girl realized that this woman was Gerald's mother. The lady asks the lady if she is okay because she feels unwell and looks so fragile. Riken greets Baroness Headley and says she's pleased to meet her, and then she thinks about how she can't show her weaknesses. The main character understands that if she decides that the girl her son is dating is unwell, she will definitely not like it. The lady asks if the lady could wait a moment until she formally introduces herself to her. The Baroness says that, of course, she will wait, as she understands that she must first introduce herself to her hostess. A young lady approaches an elderly woman and greets her. She informs her that she is a Riken of Viscount Copeland's family and asks if she remembers her. The Baroness replies that, of course, she remembers, since she is, after all, Grace's daughter. Then she smiles and says she's at a wonderful age and asks if she's married yet. The girl replies that she's not yet. The Baroness says that she needs to find a good man and marry him as soon as possible. Women say this young lady listens so respectfully to her elders' instructions. And because she's hard of hearing, the lady speaks loudly, but she listens so calmly. The Baroness says she doesn't know who will get such a daughter-in-law, but she thinks Lady Riken is a very graceful and beautiful girl. The main character says that she is too kind to her, and thanks for it. Heidi believes that a young lady should treat adults well when she gets married, and she asks if this is true. At this point, the main character thought that even if she returned to the past, she still couldn't fall in love with this man, and the present-day Baroness was well known to her. Riken recalls that her mother-in-law always pestered her about her inability to have a son. One day, she mentioned that it had already been 5 years since their wedding. The herald tells the mother that they haven't gathered together for a meal for so long and suggests not talking about bad things, since there is a child sitting at the table. The mother, surprised, asks where it is ever heard of a daughter-in-law to oppose the words of her elders, and asks who will continue the family business if there is no son. Then she insists that she quickly give birth to an heir. The mother-in-law smiles and says that her body type doesn't suggest their daughter-in-law will bear many children. The son suggests his mother stop, then explains that he and his wife are trying. The woman insists that it's easy and says they need to think about it more seriously, because she's also a mother, and she knows better. Raising a son is much better. Heidi strokes the child's head and says it's always good to raise a daughter, because it's comforting to be able to raise her as a friend. And what's more, a firstborn daughter always quickly learns how the world works. After all the girls around her were like that, and they all grew up worthy. The mother-in-law suggests thinking about the future. Then she asks if they won't have to find her a suitable partner and send her to her husband's house. Mother says her head is already starting to hurt. She's thinking about sending her as a dowry. But she insists that if they have a son, they'll be able to rely on him when he grows up. The Baroness reports that she has given birth to both a daughter and a son and is enjoying a happy time with them. She believes that if they only have a daughter, their life will probably be miserable too. She then asks if she'll hear good news soon. Riken says she'll try harder. Harold tried to keep his family's words from reaching her, but things never went according to plan. Late that evening, the protagonist asks her husband if he's been drinking alone again. He replies that he heard from the butler that Shawnee came by during the day and that she was pestering her again with her pointless conversations, and that her mother had said the same thing earlier. Harold tells his wife he can't look her in the eye. Hearing this, she protests, saying nothing bad happened when she was with Shawnee. She explains they only had tea and that she prepared their usual snacks. The wife assures that nothing special happened, since it was an ordinary day, the same as always. The husband says he tried very hard to keep her from hearing anything unpleasant. The main character says she understands he's trying and thanks him. Then he tells her she must live and endure. Sister says mother said they needed to find Brother Gerald a second wife. She said it was because the barony of Hadley couldn't end like that, and their line couldn't be cut short like that. Shawnee says that apparently her brother didn't answer her, so she thought she should know too and asks if she understands. She believes it's better to know than to live in ignorance. After a short time, Baroness Hadley grew old and left behind her dying wish. Harold and his sister Shawnee, she and her little daughter were with her until the very end. Riken only told her daughter about this when she became an adult. Hearing this, the daughter asks in surprise how this could be. She was surprised because she didn't understand how her grandmother could say such a thing. Then she asks her mother how she put up with it all. The woman tells the girl not to be so categorical, since her father isn't the type to take a second wife just to continue the family line. And then she explains that this didn't happen. The main character explains that her grandmother was old school, which is why she said that. She then adds that girls in the past have tolerated worse. The mother suggests that her daughter not worry too much, since it's all in the past now. The women approach Lady Riken and ask if she's bored. Sitting with adults can be a real bore? She replies that she's not bored at all, and that she's actually quite interested. The aristocrat tells her not to be like that and suggests they go for a little walk, as she believes it would be best for Lady Copeland. Heidi says that this house has a beautiful garden, and if the main character goes to the greenhouse, then admire the blooming roses. The grandmother says everything is fine and invites the girl to go. The young lady says she would like to see the greenhouse because the roses are blooming there. The herald tells the lady that he will show her the way. She offers him her hand and agrees to go with him. The young lady explains that they had already met at Ms. Egan's tea ceremony. And now, a few days later, they met again. The boy says he's glad to see them. Then he says that perhaps his mother caused her some inconvenience. She told him to be sure to come here today, and he kept wondering why. Riken says there was no inconvenience or anything like that. He explains that she asked his mother for the favor first. The herald says that when she graduates and truly enters high society, she will have many suitors. After all, Viscount Copeland is an outstanding politician, an honorary aristocrat, and she is his precious daughter. The boy says he doesn't think her father will allow him to be with her. The lady replies that she doesn't know, but she thinks her father likes his father, Baron Hadley, because he values sincere people above all else. The protagonist reflects that they had nothing in common in the past either, as Gerald was only interested in the family business and was not an active person. Young Lady SHE was interested in drawing and didn't know anything about business. And she understands that it's hard for them to find something in common. Riken asks what he's been up to lately. He replies that he's been very busy with the family business and managing the mine. The young gentleman explains that there are several districts in the south that belong to their family. He's trying to increase profitability and thinks he's already seeing results. The young lady thought that they were talking about business again, and she realized that his answers were the same as before and now. In her youth, the girl thought Gerald was a capable businessman. He always enthusiastically explained everything to her, even though she knew absolutely nothing about business. But ultimately, his business failed for the simple reason that he lacked sufficient investment and information. The girl understood it was all a bluff, because he wanted to appear more capable than he actually was. And she believed she was the one who knew this trait of his better than anyone else. The main character considers that it's better to show this side of herself than to let others see her true self. And when she looked at the guy, she thought about how confident he seemed. The young lady doesn't understand what happened to the Gerald from the past. She wonders what he was thinking about when he was left alone. Riken understands that even though she was a wife with whom he was not very close, he thinks that perhaps he is more comfortable being alone. The girl thought that if she had been better, Gerald and her daughter would have lived happier lives. She also believed she should have been more attentive to her husband. The main character reflects on the fact that her daughter still has a father and his family, but Gerald has no one left. The guy asks Lady Copeland. She apologizes and explains that she was lost in thought because graduation is coming up soon, which has made her sensitive and sometimes makes her feel that way. At this time, the girl thought that these were all her useless thoughts, and she understands that now she is here and the future, where she died in an accident with a carriage, has not yet arrived. The young lady believes that she needs to focus on the present. Riken asks in surprise if this is the greenhouse his mother mentioned, realizing it's winter for the roses, which are blooming so profusely. The girl thought that it seemed like May now, and she wondered if maybe she should also start a greenhouse. Harold asks if girls like receiving such flowers as gifts. She replies that they usually do, and explains that they might not like it if they received flowers from a man they don't love. The guy asks her if she likes these flowers. She replies that she does. The young gentleman explains that, frankly, he doesn't understand much about it, and he doesn't know why people like such things. Harold says that if the flowers are so amazing, he wonders if the price shouldn't be appropriate. However, he understands that they fade quickly, and he can't enjoy them for long. And then he says it's better to save money than to give something useless. The guy asks the girl if that's true. The young lady looked at him and thought that she hadn't known he could have such an expression. She reflected that they had lived together for over 20 years. but she had never seen him like this. The girl replies that giving flowers is a way to express your feelings. The joy she feels when she receives them is so genuine. The young gentleman says that she is saying this to show that one should think more about the feelings put into a gift than about its value. At this point, the main character recalled a conversation with her husband's sister. Shoni said that her brother had actually already met a girl before they were assigned to each other. However, her mother was strongly against it, so they broke up. Hearing this, Riken thought about how the timing was perfect. After all, several more months were supposed to pass before they were introduced. The young lady asks Baron Hadley if he has a boyfriend, and at that moment, she thinks that Gerald must be dating someone right now, going against his parents. The guy replies that he has a girlfriend, and she's an ordinary person. However, she can't compare to Lady Copeland. Hearing this, the main character thought that she shouldn't talk about her girlfriend like that, and she believes that, whatever the case, she shouldn't talk about someone dear to her like that. After all, she's his lover, and he's seeing her behind her mother's back. The girl thought that even if she wanted to say something, she couldn't utter a word. The young lady thought that this was not the Harold she knew, and with whom she had lived half her life. Riken thought that if Gerald had suddenly returned to their past, she thought he might remember their daughter. And she believed that everything was fine in her past, too, and she couldn't understand how she could have been so sure that would happen. The protagonist reflects on how this isn't their reality. As her husband doesn't know about the time he spent with her and their daughter, he feels like she's missing out on many moments in her life. The young gentleman tells the girl that she's turned pale and asks if she's feeling well. He then tells her she'd better go back, and he'll tell the other ladies everything. The young lady says that it would be better to do so, and then thanks him. Harold asks if he might have offended her in some way. She objects and says it's not his fault, then says she had fun. The girl realized that the present had changed and felt there was no reason to be upset just yet. After all, she knew he had a girlfriend, but she didn't want to cling to every detail of his life before marriage. Riken believes she should marry him and break up with Sir Stur. However, she wonders what if she's wrong. And what if the Herald turns against his mother and runs away with his beloved? The young lady ponders whether she should win him over. She also doesn't understand why, even in her second life, she lacks wisdom. She feels she's searching for a reason to break up with the Herald. The maid informs her mistress that she has brought her tea with milk and sugar, believing that eating a little sweetness will improve her mood. The girl asks if she looks upset. Penny replies that maybe just a little bit. The main character explains that it's just quite cold outside, which is why she's sad. The maid asks if she can bring her a new canvas, since she hasn't discovered any new paints yet. She also wonders if Master Rodrigo has invited him to join her. The lady asks if she has time to worry about her. Then she reminds her that she's meeting her lover today. Penny asks if she should go on a date, since her mistress has been looking upset lately and she even cried recently. The maid says she'll just be there for her. Riken insists that everything is fine with her, and suggests that she not be like that, but just go and enjoy life. The mistress says she has business to attend to this evening and will be writing a letter. She tells the maid it is cold outside and offers to put on her kerchief, which she took from her neck. Penny, surprised, says it's silk. The young lady insists it's fine, then says it suits her very well. The maid thanked her mistress and said she would be back soon. The lady suggested not staying late and telling her how it went tomorrow. Last week, classes at the academy ended. Riken thought about how all her business was now completed and that she had no reason to leave the palace until graduation. The girl saw a postcard from Deborah, which contained congratulations on her graduation from the academy. The main character saw another letter and then opened it. This one was from Sir Sturmel. He wrote that he wanted to believe she was enjoying her time with her friends. The young gentleman writes that he has already arrived at the Marquis of Raff's castle. However, he is very eager to return. But winter has not yet arrived, and the yellow crimson is still there. And as proof, he sends her an autumn leaf. The young gentleman asks if she misses him even a little bit, and then tells her that he misses her very much. The maid tells her mistress that her mother says dinner is ready. The young lady replies that she will be back soon. The main character thought that in the end she was unable to write anything to him. After dinner, Mom says she still has some paperwork to sort out, so she'll go first. Brother says he's off to do his homework. The father tells his daughter that he wanted to drink her tea. He says that she has been very calm lately. The lady replies that she has already grown up. However, the father insists that she was not, since just recently he was holding her on his lap. The girl smiled and asked when that was. Her father asked if she had everything prepared for graduation. My daughter, surprised, asks if she should cook anything. Then she tells me that classes are already over and they don't have a final project. Dad asks what about the graduation ceremony. She replies that everything is ready and payments are in order, and they've already told her the order of things. The man asks about her partner. The daughter replies that there's no need to return to the topic again. Then she says he doesn't have to repeat it again because she's much more mature than he thinks. Papa asks her if she likes Sir Sturmo. Then he tells her that it's quite difficult for him to turn a blind eye to the situation he finds himself in. However, he believes he's capable of taking care of her. Father explains that what's considered most important in an aristocratic marriage is, of course, not love, but the possession of titles. Therefore, he cannot rule it out entirely, as he believes love is essential for a happy life. Riken says she knows this. And at that moment, she wonders where else there are people who know this so well. However, she understands that even without marriage, she can feel the warmth of love. The girl remembers that she still hasn't lost this feeling of how small a newborn child is. The main character recalled the moment when she looked at her baby, and the thought flashed through her mind that she could devote her entire life to her tiny daughter. And that's what she calls love. After dinner, as she was returning home, she realized she was very tired and wanted to go to bed as soon as possible. Realizing it had been a hard day, suddenly the main character sees Penny. Then she asks why she looks like that, and wonders what happened. Riken tells the maid not to sit there but to come into the room with her. Penny tells her mistress that she can't touch her because she's dirty. Hearing this, the girl screams and asks why she is dirty, and then insists that she should not say that. The main character sat the girl down by the fireplace to warm up first. The maid said she could handle it herself. The lady asks how she'll do it with such trembling hands. Then she tells her not to worry, because she'll wash her. The main character thought about Penny's cheek turning red and soon getting a bruise. She asked if that man, her lover, had done it. Raikon asked the girl if she came to her because she needs help. Then he asserts that she wants to help her. The maid says she made a mistake, and then starts crying. She explains that she's still too young and unmarried, but she wanted to go into the man's room. And that's how it all ended. The mistress embraces the maid and suggests she rest first and not think about anything. She tells her to rest, wash, and sleep, and then they will think about everything together. The main character claims that everything will be fine and suggests that the girl just not worry, because she will help her. The young lady understands that maids who become pregnant before marriage are dismissed from the palace. And if such a note appears on a resume, such servants will almost never be hired again. Even after returning to their parents' home, they find it difficult to admit the reason for their dismissal. Lady realizes she must have had nowhere to return to. And ultimately, she decides to return to her lover. Riken understands that Penny is only 19 now, and she can't let things turn out the same way they did in the past. Because she's not that little girl anymore. The protagonist turns to Penny and suggests she get up, as they need to prepare for departure. She suggests they quickly put on their robe, so no one will find out. The maid asks in surprise where they are going. She replies, "To the mage's tower." It's generally accepted that children are God's greatest blessing. However, there are times when it's necessary to get rid of them. The aristocrats have secretly found a way to do this and secretly share it among themselves. The main character, he tells the maid that she doesn't look well, and then asks if she can bear it. She replies that she'll try. Penny saw the lady and pointed her finger at her. Riken saw that it was Gerald's mother and wondered why the noblewoman had come here at such a time. The lady turns to the maid and tells her not to worry, as she does not recognize them. Gerald asks what brought them here so early in the morning. He also wonders if she really wants to contact Sir Sturmo urgently. The main character announces that she's come to see a blood mage. The red-haired man is surprised to hear this, then asks how she knew about it and insists that now is not the time. The magician says that according to the rules he can't ask her, Then he gestures to her in the direction and tells her to go that way. The girl realizes that the fact that Togo is looking for blood mages in the tower means they want to buy a special magic potion. And the most popular of these is the one that prevents pregnancy. At this time, the main character thought that she never even imagined that what she heard at social events would turn out to be useful. Riken asks Penny if it's too much for her. Then he suggests listening to her carefully, because until last night she thought she should let her make her own decision. But then she changed her mind. The mistress says that the man is not right for her. But the maid objects and says that he said he loves her. The lady asks how true his words are if he hits her, and then claims that this is exactly what happened to her last night. The lady says that if he is someone who truly cares about her, then he would never touch her, who is still a very young girl. Penny claims she was the one who walked into his house. Then she cries and says she's tarnished her honor. The protagonist claims that the only person who was vicious in this situation was the man, not her or the maid, and no matter what happens, she will be against her marriage to him. Riken reminds that she already said that she wants her to stay with her for a long time. Penny cries and says that even when the mistress marries, she will follow her and be her devoted companion. And then she will thank her. The mage asks if they have finished their conversation and asks if they were the one looking for the blood mage. The main character apologizes because he had to wait while they talked. He explains that it's impolite to just walk in and leave someone crying. Riken says she thought she would meet the man responsible for selling magical medicines, but she met the most honorable. The gentleman explains that when he can't sleep, he sometimes works here. Hearing this, the protagonist imagines that this man holds a high position in the mage tower. However, they don't know him, and the tower has many mages who never show their faces. The man asks if they're saying they're looking for a blood mage for that lady. The girl says there's a chance she's pregnant, and that's why they're looking for a cure. The magician asks if she has met a vicious man. And then, using magic, he touches the girl. Penny fell. And the magician tells the lady not to be afraid, as he only put her to sleep briefly, as the procedure could be difficult for her. He also informs her that everything inside her body will go away. Riken asks if it's dangerous. He explains that it's much healthier than poisoning your body with a toxic drug. The mage believes that in such cases, it's best to resort to magic right away. At this point, the protagonist realized that there are practically no mages willing to help with magic, and it's easier to give them medicine. The young lady apologizes and asks if he could keep it a secret. He explains that what happens in the tower never leaves its confines. The mage asks if she came to the mage's tower at such a time just for her maid. He thinks she's a very caring mistress. The lady replied that one should help those in need, especially if it's someone close to her. And she wanted to do everything possible, since she was the closest, her servant. The protagonist asks when she'll wake up. The magician suggests taking their time and says he thinks they have time to have some tea before she wakes up. The magician quickly poured tea with the help of magic and invited the lady to sit down comfortably. At this point, the girl thought it would be right not to be surprised by what was happening in the Poppy Tower. She asked if he wanted to talk to her about anything. The man says he's really just curious about what kind of person she is, as he believes she's far more famous in the tower than the princess. The magician reports that after Sturter became the tower's master, he thought the entire tower of magicians would move to the center of the sea. And he thought he'd want to see the king's face. Utter despair. But he received a title and joined high society. The girl says that if he thinks Sturter made this choice because of her, he's wrong. He asks if she's sure. The lady replies that she is certain, and she reflects on how, even in the past, when they weren't acquainted, he ultimately chose the title and engagement. And she believes that this time, too, he has chosen to enter Soviet society. Having become Duke of Sagna, he will eventually tie the knot with someone. And she understands that, if not with her, then someone else will be found. Riken wondered if today's her would be able to congratulate him so easily on his engagement, and if she would be able to bear the sight of him in the wedding hall, holding the hand of the other. The main character approaches the gentleman and asks if he is a time mage. He replies that he is, and from what he sees, she has been closely observing how he uses magic. The girl says she noticed the glow of his watch, which he uses to channel magic. Then she reveals that she knew a time mage. Hearing this, the man asks in surprise if she is talking about the one who cast the time protection on her. The lady asks what time protection is. He asks if she knows about it. Then he explains that protection means she receives help from a magical attribute. The girl asks if using magical attributes requires talent for magic. He replies that defense is a great defensive skill, as it's how mages protect themselves from the magic they use. The man says that if people are receiving protection, it means it's the work of a very powerful mage. He doesn't know any other time mages in the tower and believes it must have been a mage from somewhere else. Riken asks, surprised, if he's talking about someone casting time magic on her. He replies that it's safe to say so. After all, he's rarely encountered cases of time magic being used on people. Unless, of course, it's a particularly special case like this one. The mage tells the lady she's turned pale. She replies that it's nothing special. And at that moment, she thinks it must have been her doing, since she knows no other time mages besides her. The main character recalled that her daughter told her that if she were to be reborn, she should definitely do so. And she believes that since she was reborn at 19, it was her doing. The lady realized her daughter had spoken these words to her because she intended to. And as she lay dying, she heard her sad voice, and it seemed to her. The man tells the lady that she looks bad, but she objects and says that everything is fine and explains that she just didn't even think about it. Riken says she doesn't know any high-level mages capable of casting such protection. He says something tells him she does have some ideas. The gentleman tells her not to think he's interrogating her, and explains that the old man was simply curious, as he believes this can happen quite naturally. The man explains that it's common for the bloodlines of mages to mix in aristocratic families. Therefore, he believes she might not even feel the magical reaction. He suggests she not worry so much. The nanny asks the lady where she went so early in the morning. The lady replies that nothing special. However, the nanny, surprised, says that the lady is paler than death. Then the nanny approaches Penny and asks what's wrong. The mistress suggests that the nanny leave the maid and turns to her, suggesting that she go and rest. The girl explains that they both didn't sleep all night and says that they will think about the rest tomorrow. The woman, surprised, asks her mistress what's going on and what's wrong with Penny's face. She then says she must report this to her mistress immediately. The lady replies there's no need, as she'll tell her mother herself. The girl says she's sleepy now, and the nanny suggests leaving her alone. Hearing this, the woman asks if the lady is okay, and then says she'll be there. However, the main character objects and explains that she wants to be left alone. Riken thought that her daughter really did this, and believed that it was really her doing. The main character realized that her daughter's level of magic wasn't as high as she thought. She believes that her best skill was stopping the time of objects. One day, my daughter said that she had stopped the kettle from working for a while and therefore suggested that her mother take her time. Hadley asks her mother if her grandmother will come to the meeting. She's wondering if they should try to stop the flowers in the garden from wilting. When her mother asks if she can do it, her daughter replies that she thinks it's a piece of cake. Magic, even her daughter, was sometimes useful in everyday life. Sometimes she made mistakes, and her magic's reach was limited. Compared to other capable time mages, her daughter's magic wasn't all that incredible, and the main character wonders how she could have returned someone to the past. And she can't understand whether she really had the power to do so in the first place. Riken thought her daughter might have used time magic to return her to her 19-year-old self, and believes that, in her eyes, her life was so miserable. The girl realized that she certainly hadn't lived a happier life than many others, but she also knew she hadn't been that unhappy. After all, she believed that the time she spent with her daughter had always been filled with happiness. The woman recalls the day her daughter took her first step without her help, and how warm the spring sun felt as it illuminated the crown of her head. The main character realizes she couldn't possibly remember this. And what was the sweet tea like that they dusted together in the living room that day, when they had their fight and she was angry with her? The roses they planted together in the garden were somewhat fragrant. The lady wondered if her daughter hadn't noticed it. Riken believes her life was filled with joy after her birth. However, her father wasn't her prince, but she was her princess. When the lady looked at the flowers, she realized that they had all already withered. And at that time, she thought that it was all because of her. The main character believes that, although she must meet with Gerald, she's thinking about something completely different. She realizes it's all her fault, and she's truly sorry. The young lady writes in her letter that she fears this might offend him and put him in a difficult position. She understands that it was difficult for him, but he accepted her offer to become a partner. Therefore, she is grateful to the gentleman. The girl writes that she now wants to make it as if it never happened. And now she will live forever, remembering his kindness. At this time, in the castle of the Marquis of Raft, he tells his grandson that he heard that the king's lieutenant had recently come to see him. He asks if it's true. Shooter replies that this is exactly how it happened. Grandfather says he was the son of a viscount from the south, and he is the king's most loyal servant. The young man asks in surprise how he knew about this. He replies that he has eyes and ears, and not just here. The Marquis reports that his men are everywhere, not just one or two. Then he asks what he thought, that he only knows about what's happening in the lands of Eldan. He says that there are informants far beyond. Mother thinks their grandfather is extraordinary. She says she never leaves the castle and asks why he sent people to such distant lands. The Marquis explains that there's nothing wrong with vigilance and believes one must always keep one's ears open. He says that the enemy of his only daughters and grandson is none other than the king of the Elblands. The grandfather asks the boy what the gift was. He replies that it was a valuable treasure, which he immediately returned. Then he says that instead of sending someone else, and thereby claiming his rights as the father, it would have been better if he had come himself. Hearing this, the Marquis tells him not to make fun of him and smiles. Shibdir says his status is still uncertain. Then he reports that, since he became Lord of the Mage Tower, everyone is talking about it. The boy says that's why he's going to clear everything up. He'll accept the title and join the aristocracy. Grandfather asks, surprised, if he'll accept the title. Then he points out that he's never expressed any interest in it. Shadr says that he is not sure whether he will leave this country or live his whole life in the Tower of Magicians. Sirianel supports her son and says he'll have to do it someday. However, she believes he may have made the decision in haste, as he never mentioned it. Grandpa asks if it's all because of that person he's dating. His mother was surprised to hear this and asked if it was true. She believed that was why he had rushed into making his decision. The Marquis says that in Soviet society, gossip doesn't spread far, but he understands that there are still those who know about it. It seems that the illegitimate son of Marquis Raft and Lord of the Tower of Mages, Sholadamail Raft, is serious about the daughter of Viscount Copeland. Mom says that Viscount Copeland has his own traditions, and the Viscount himself is considered an outstanding person. Grandfather insists that, given the family's class, she's not up to par, and he thinks he'd be better off choosing a princess. He also says that if he does start a relationship with her, it will distance him from the royal family. But maybe that's for the best. The Marquis says that from the princess's perspective, he is the one who will undermine the stability of the throne. However, he understands that it is not surprising that he suddenly chose a lady from a lowly family. The grandfather believes his grandson should receive a title commensurate with his position and abilities. He then asserts that the same applies to his mate. She later says he understands this and reminds everyone that he said he doesn't need power or strength. However, he has no intention of giving up what is rightfully his. The guy says he doesn't want to be treated like a weakling who can be cornered. Mom, surprised, asks if it's true he has a girlfriend he's dating. He replies yes and explains that it started not long ago. My son says her speech, manners, and soul are all wonderful. She understands him well, and he feels at peace with her. Shidr says that when he decides the issue of his status, he will officially propose to her. Sirianel says that if her son thinks that, then she's a good person. She asks if he's rushing because of her too. He replies that he is, and that's why he wants to return to the capital as soon as possible. The young gentleman announces that upon his return he will request an audience with the princess and will immediately take the oath. Shaldar says he doesn't see much point in a lavish title ceremony, and therefore thinks 2 to 3 weeks would be enough. Grandfather asks if he wants to deal with everything alone. Grandson replies that he plans to ask the tower's master for help. Since there are customs there, one of the mages is eventually given a title. The son says that if his mother wants to join, he won't be opposed. However, he insists that it's not that significant an event for him, as he's simply getting ready to sort out something they've been putting off for so long. At this time, the guy thought that even if he organized a lavish banquet and invited a bunch of people, he would still be the subject of gossip. Mom says that, whatever the case, he's still in a hurry, since he made such a sudden decision. Then she tells him that his future life depends on it. She also asks how Togo can get the title by next spring, and then have the engagement. The woman explains that she is simply afraid that if he is in such a hurry, he might make a mistake. Shieta replies that, since his mother speaks so seriously, she considers him stupid. Then she informs him that he has promised to go with Lady Copeland to the Academy graduation ball, as it is a very important event for her. The guy says that if her partner is a person whose status is not defined, and asks if she will be comfortable. His mother asks if this is what he's so worried about. He replies that he doesn't want to hurt her in any way. The woman, surprised, says that her son has already grown up. Then she asks if he knows how much he's worried them all since childhood, and says that his voice sounds different today. Mother says that after listening to him, it seemed to her that he became stronger. Suddenly, the boy saw magic and wondered why the canary had arrived. He realized that if it had arrived now, the lady must have sent it at dawn. When Shitter read the letter, he told his mother that he must now return to the capital. At this point, the main character thought about how she'd had this dream several times, in which she was welcoming spring with him, and she thought it was so strange. Started dating when it was cold. Suddenly, the boy comes into his sister's room. But the nanny stops him and explains that his mistress is resting. The little gentleman says that sister hasn't eaten anything for a long time. Then he asks if she's sick and if she really feels that bad. Riken tells her brother it's rude. However, he ignores her words and says that if she eats it, she'll feel better. The nanny explains that food that has been on the bed cannot be eaten. At this point, the girl realizes she has no strength left. The maid says that the young master is obviously very worried about her. The nanny touches the girl's head and says she wants to check if she has a fever. The girl assures her that everything is fine and she is not sick. She explains that she simply feels heavy at heart and thinks that she will feel better if she rests. Miss Rod says her mother is also very worried about her. Riken explains that after she's washed up, she'll eat something, and then visit her mother. And then she thinks about how she shouldn't wait for Penny to come and tell her her morning bath is ready. The main character asks where the pennies are. The nanny replies that the head maid called her early in the morning, and it seems she told her she'd be back before her mistress woke up. However, she believes there's still no news. Hearing this, the girl wondered why the head maid had called for Penny. The girl quickly got out of bed, and the nanny told her that she hadn't recovered at all. The lady assures her she's fine and suggests they go find Penny. Then she says that if Penny has met the head maid, she should tell her mistress that she's urgently needed. Riken says she'll go and say hello to her mother. However, she realizes she can't go in her pajamas, so she suggests sending someone to her dressing room. Left alone, the main character reflected on the fact that there were several other girls around her and Penny's age. She realized that Penny usually had little contact with the head maid, and that she spent most of her time working alongside her. The lady realizes that the head maid supervises the servants responsible for other household chores. And since she secretly asked for a nanny, the head maid must still be unaware of the circumstances. However, the girl became curious as to why the head maid had called Penny. A new maid enters the room and explains that Miss Rod sent her to her. The mistress invites her in and then says she wants to ask something. Riken asks the girl if the head maid often introduces them to a good man. The man says he's sorry this time, as he has to take responsibility. The maid says that's enough for today and invites him to return, then says she'll take care of her herself. The man says that thanks to her, he was able to meet you, Penny. Then he gives her a bag of coins and tells her that this is his small thanks. The head maid informed him that he needed to leave quickly. When he left, the nanny met him in the hallway, curious as to who he was and how he dared to walk so leisurely. Penny tells the head maid that she came because she thought she was alone. The woman in the green dress insists that the girl should take responsibility. Then she asks what's wrong with her reaction, as she believes it's rare to find a man like that. The head maid says she'll speak to her mistress. Penny says her mistress won't let her marry so easily. Then she declares she won't marry this man. Hearing this, the head maid asks what she's talking about and wonders if she can end things so abruptly. The girl explains that he beat her and she won't marry such a man. The woman in the green dress asks why the maid is crying and wonders if she can stop. Then she claims that she's thinking about her. The girl explains that it has nothing to do with her and then says that the lady said that she should stay by her side. Penny reports that the lady said that the love of someone who treats her like that cannot be true and claims that she believes her. At this point, the nanny opens the door to the room. The head maid explains that this part is her responsibility and asks what brings her here. She also asks if she has anything to say. Miss Rod reports that Mrs. Riken is looking for both of them. Then she asks what the uneasy atmosphere is all about. The nanny informs her mistress that she has brought Penny and the head maid. They are surprised, as the mistress has also called the butler. The head maid thought that the young mistress had found someone who was on her side and was trying to act like a good housewife. The main character turns to Penny and tells her to go to her room and clean it up. The girl says she's feeling ill today and suggests they not discuss it again. Then she asks the head maid if she knows the fruit merchant well enough to woo him for his pennies. The head maid asks her mistress what she's talking about. The lady suggests she tell the truth herself, since she understands everything perfectly well. The young lady reports that she heard from the butler that it is through her that people from their house meet others. The woman in the green dress explains that she only did it because it was best for them and chose people with good character. Riken says that since she's the head maid and excels in so many things, she knows good merchants, and now she understands how she attracts them. The lady says that then it turns out she brought in a man she only knew through work and introduced him to her maid. Then she asks if she thinks it's okay to introduce her to a stranger while disguising herself. The protagonist says that's quite clever. Then she says she's heard the handmaid introduce young women to strange men more than once, and two of them talked about getting married soon. Riken reports that one of them returned home immediately after Togo mentioned the wedding. The other quit her job. The lady reports that she had assumed it was their close relatives who were interested in the engagement. However, this time, she had to go to great lengths to connect her personal maid with a man. The protagonist reveals that she thought he was a generous benefactor. Then she asks not only if she was paid for this transaction, but also how much she was asking for an introduction to the naive and foolish maids working in the aristocrat's household. The head maid asks her mistress what she's talking about. The lady asks if she's right. Then she says that if she's not, she can rest easy, because if the man Penny was seeing is actually involved with her, it would be a big problem. The lady says it's all clear from Penny's face, and she's so upset she can't sleep because her closest servant has returned to her like this. And then she asks how she can sit idly by. Riken explains that she is simply worried, as it is the head maid's duty to keep an eye on the others, and asks if that is correct. The lady says she would like the maids to be able to build good relationships, and she would be happy. Then they could find their partners and live happily. The mistress reports that the young maids haven't been in their house for very long, so she's confused when they quit their jobs, citing circumstances. She believes this means there's some problem in their household. Riken asks what will happen if word gets out beyond the mansion. She believes her mother will be the first to suffer, as it's her job to keep an eye on the servants. The lady says that if mother earns herself a bad reputation as someone who fails to keep an eye on the people in the mansion, and she wonders if she, the head maid, won't end up suffering as well. The girl says that the head maid is recognized as the head servant under her charge, and that the maids are dismissed. She assures her that she is someone her mother trusts. Therefore, she wouldn't want any problems to arise. And then she says that there's no hope of such a thing happening again. The mistress insists that her maid's problem is her problem, and therefore suggests she be more careful in the future. She then tells the head maid that she can go, as she has much to do, and to thank her for taking the time. Riken turns to the butler and tells him to tell his father to break the contract with the man who beat Penny. He believes it's too humiliating for their house to have a contract with a man who preys on the weak. The lady says that, if possible, she would not like to cross paths with him in the capital. The butler tells her not to worry, and he will convey everything to the gentleman, as everything will be as she wishes. The nanny asks how Penny is and wonders if this is the man she was talking about. The lady replies that Penny is fine. Then she explains that she managed to escape when he ran out of strength. He slammed her head against the wall, which is why she's in this state. Miss Rod says this matter concerns her honor, and therefore she will keep everything secret. Then she says she will ask a doctor she knows to come secretly and cure Penny. Penny cried loudly after hearing everything in her room. The protagonist comforted her and asked her to stop crying because her eyes were swelling up again. The mistress explains that all she could do was drive the man out of the capital. The maid assures her that she is grateful. Then she explains that she was terrified that the man she liked so much had turned into such a terrible person, and she still can't believe it. Penny says she was so scared she didn't say anything to her face. Lady says that's okay, because she would have been scared too. Then she hugs the girl and says she's grateful. Mother reports that after hearing the story about the head maid, she was a little worried, even though she trusts her daughter. However, she was afraid that her daughter would lose consciousness and was worried about that. The girl assures her mother that she's not that weak. The woman says she's very caring, and that's why she doesn't interfere when it comes to her. However, it's reported that this was a bit of a surprise. The lady says she knew the penny was shaking, but she didn't think it was shaking enough to even call the butler. Riken reports that she has no sisters, and besides, they must stop this kind of behavior immediately. The daughter reports that the fruit and vegetable seller has been married several times before. She heard that his previous wife ran away from him at dawn. Mama says the head maid will soon be leaving the house, and she thought she might be somewhat willful, but she was conscientious. Then she says that while she was busy with her own affairs, she didn't even notice what was happening behind her. The woman apologizes for not keeping an eye on the head maid, and she hopes that her daughter was not harmed because of it. The girl insists she's unharmed, but worries about Penny and the other maids. Her mother hugs her daughter and tells her she's suffered so much. She says she thinks she's just really tired. Then she asks if she's doing the right thing. Riken says that sometimes she doesn't know and isn't sure if she's doing the right thing. Then she assures her mother that she can handle it, no matter what happens. The mother tells her daughter that someday everything will be forgotten, and therefore suggests to her daughter not to worry too much, since time spares no one. At this point, the protagonist thought about ending everything all at once, no matter whether she succeeds or fails. Because she believes that, in any case, there is no such thing as a perfect life. The girl believes that, without regret, even if she had died then, time would have healed her daughter's soul, and even she, grieving over the death of her parents, was able to embrace her daughter with a smile, standing in her wedding dress. The protagonist understands that her daughter would one day hold her child's hand and walk with her, smiling. However, she was mistaken, because one small choice could completely change her life. Riken realizes that even after losing so much time, she still wants to meet her daughter. The nanny looked out the window and said that it seemed like a hurricane was approaching, and she understood that it was not even summer yet, but she thought it was better to close the windows so that the lady could sleep. Miss Rod tells the girl that the food is almost ready and asks where she's going. The mistress replies that she'll go to bed early today. The nanny insists that she should eat anything. The girl apologizes and then explains that she doesn't want to eat anything and believes she'll feel better tomorrow. The main character tells the nanny not to worry, as it's not about the penny. She explains that all sorts of sad thoughts are just creeping into her head. The nanny says that she will help her, but the lady objects and says that she can handle it herself. The girl looked out the window and wondered if the bird had managed to reach him. She had heard of Sir Stur's magical abilities, but the distance from here to the Raft Mansion was quite long. The main character became interested in what if this bird did not fly there and her letter was just lying in some vacant lot. The young lady doesn't know what to do if he appears before her, as if nothing had happened, with a smile on his face, and it seemed to her that she didn't like to think about it. Suddenly, the girl saw Sir Chandra standing on the balcony. He asked the girl what was wrong with her face and also inquired if anything was hurting her. The main character asks in surprise how he ended up here. The young gentleman apologizes, then explains that there is no excuse for entering the young lady's room without permission. He then explains that he wanted to visit her officially, but knows she doesn't want to see him. Riken asks Sir Chandra if he caused this hurricane. He replies that you can move much faster with the wind. The magician asks what this means and whether she's afraid of him or not. The lady explains that it's not like that. He asks why she has that expression on her face. The girl explains that she just feels a little cold. Then she says she explained everything in the note the bird brought. The lady says she wishes he would forget about her request to accompany her to the prom, and she apologizes. The guy asks if she'll just write down everything that happened between them on a piece of paper. She replies yes. Sturmel, screaming, asks if he did something wrong. Then she offers to tell him, and he'll fix it. The lady explains that it is not his fault, and she just thinks that she can't do it anymore, that's all. The guy touches the girl's face and says she's crying again, just like last time. He says that means she wanted to break up with him back then. Shooter asks if the lady is afraid he'll propose. She assures him that's not the issue. The young gentleman says that she then wants nothing to do with him and wishes to erase his name from her life. This is despite the fact that they spent a lot of time together, holding hands, walking and dancing. The lady assures her that this is not the case. He asks, if that is not the case, then what happened? The guy says that maybe all this is because he is an illegitimate child, and for this reason, he can no longer be her lover. The main character realizes they haven't spent much time together. After all, only 3 months have passed. But she believes it was an unforgettable time. The boy thought he'd never felt anything like this before, because those moments were filled with warmth, and he believes that with this man, he could be happy forever. Shooter understands that he knows well that it's not easy to be constantly happy. However, he wanted to try it with her. And back then, it seemed to him that with this girl, this dream could become reality. The young master informs her that because he is an illegitimate son, he is not allowed to be her lover. And at that moment, he thinks that ultimately, this is only his problem. After all, he made the decision to obtain the title for her sake, even though she didn't ask for it, and therefore she is not to blame. At this point, the main character thought about how she had hurt him, and it was all because of her. She believes she should have stopped everything earlier, before Sir Stur invited her, and before they kissed. As they held hands, they said each other's names. Riken understands that no matter how she justifies it, it's all because of her greed. And also because of her desire to spend at least a little more time with him. The girl says she still believes neither he nor Miss Raft have any reason to doubt themselves. Then she reveals she has a completely different problem of her own. The main character understands that he is the Duke of Sagnashalad, the one whom she should not touch at all. The lady thought that she had not planned this from the beginning, and if she had fallen in love with him, she would no longer be able to turn everything back. The girl believes that if she is sad, looking at him who has become the Duke of Sagn from afar, and if at some point she feels weak because of this, then she understands that she will not be able to forgive herself. Riken says she knows she acted rudely towards him, but initially, even after he accepted her invitation, she didn't plan to continue communicating with him after graduation. The lady says that when she spoke to him, she thought that he would refuse her, and explains that this is why she did what she did. The girl, crying out, explains that she lacks courage, but she wants to live and take control of her own life. Because she needs to get married and has a family, friends, and her own personal life. The protagonist explains that from birth, she lived as the daughter of a simple viscount. She never considered another life and doesn't think she could. Shooter says she's well aware of his true status, and also the fact that he could soon receive the title. Then she says that even if he said he would receive it, she wonders if he might change his mind. The guy claims that this is not something that can harm her and swears to her on the Tower of Magicians. The lady suggests not changing his plans for someone like her. He explains that he's doing it because he wants to, simply because he has a happy future with her, holding her hand in his. Riken thanks him for his warm feelings. Then she tells him she can't be happy with him because she has her own problems. She apologizes, and says it's good that she apologized to him in person. Shooter says what he wants to hear isn't an apology, and asks if she's ever thought about him seriously. The girl announces that she will become the Baron's wife, a simple baroness, neither rich nor poor, and his charm will be incomparable to his. The lady informs him that there will be no great love between them, and let him be the one who doesn't make his heart flutter. But she will bear him a child and devote herself entirely to her, and she will wait until she gives birth to a grandson or granddaughter. Riken says she'll live a life where she can tell her children stories from her youth. Then she explains that she can't live her life solely on the love of her husband. The girl says that, on the contrary, if she has a daughter she'll cope, and that's why she asks him to ask her. She explains that she has no desire to suffer over this anymore, as she simply wants to go her own way peacefully. Shida asks if she is saying that she is leaving him, having destroyed everything inside him, and forced him to abandon her. Riken insists he's not the type to love someone like her. He wonders if the reason matters, and he wonders where it all began, what it was, who started it, and who ended it. Shida says that if she has feelings for him, she asks how he can force her. Then she says that it turns out he's been the cause of nothing but trouble. The young gentleman apologized and then left. The girl ran after him onto the balcony, but he had disappeared. The princess asks why he suddenly wanted to become the Duke of Sagna, and she wonders why he changed his mind. At this time, Her Majesty thought that he was up to something, since he had come to the capital so suddenly and was asking for a title. Shelter explains that he only wants to gain power and strengthen his status, even if she thinks it's his whim. The princess says that it would be a great mistake to call the Lord of Water and Wind capricious. The young man explains that he has no intention of fighting her for the throne and advises her not to worry, as he believes his title is unrelated to her right to inherit the throne. He believes it won't be a burden for her. Shader says that, however, he asks her to grant him this title. The princess says that if she can help him, she has no reason to refuse, as she believes such an opportunity comes rarely. Her Majesty asks how Lady Copeland is doing. The young gentleman explains that she has nothing to worry about. He then explains that, as he said earlier, he has no interest in the throne, and she can rest assured of that, since he will not have a child to inherit the throne. Hearing this, the princess thought that it didn't matter what the reason was, since she believed it would only benefit her, and she understood that now he certainly couldn't harm her. The elder mage says he heard Shatter has received the title of Duke. Then he asks if he'll want to block all her paths. The guy explains that he just doesn't want to lie to himself or hide it anymore. And he explains that it has nothing to do with anything else. The magician says that means he's been living this whole time deceiving himself. Then he reveals that he's been watching him for a long time, and that he's the one who has absolutely no interest in power or titles. He speaks as if he's been hiding this from the start. The teacher asks if he didn't want to get rid of his weakness by receiving a title, and says that then this girl would look at him differently. The guy asks what he knows, since he's saying such things. The magician says he's stupid and asks when he'll grow up. He also asks if he thinks the girl rejected him because of his status. The man asks if he thinks she'll accept him even if he becomes emperor, or perhaps she'd accept him if he became a baron instead of a duke. The mage asks if she didn't say that's no longer suitable for her. Sheeter says he speaks as if he knows her well. The teacher says he was simply curious about the girl he fell in love with, that's all. Then he says seeing her once was enough. The elder magician says that he has met many, but not all of them awakened in him a desire to know more about them. Except for God. He says that all people must be fascinated by power and their desires, but some find other things far more important in their lives. And then the magician asks if this isn't like Shidera. The boy then asks what he should do. The teacher explains that he shouldn't focus on his own problems, but try to understand the problems of others. He should also think about how he can solve them. The teacher says that if he tells him everything now, he asks if it will help him, since he believes he is already a grown man himself and has something that can help him or destroy him. And then he says that everything depends on him. At this point, Shida realized the teacher was right, and Lady Riken's problem had nothing to do with titles or his status. He understood that the lady had said she wanted to become a baroness, but she didn't seem happy, and he wondered why then. The butler asks the young gentleman if he's back yet. Schichter asks if he received a letter. The butler replies that there were none. The boy explains that he needs to change his clothes because he got caught in the rain. The servant says he'll get everything ready and then informs him that Lady Scylla has arrived with her friend and they're in the living room. Hearing this, the young gentleman thought about how many living rooms there were in the mansion. He wondered why she had come to his. She was his cousin, so he thought there was nothing particularly surprising about it. Shatter thought that this was a bit problematic, since he wanted to rest. When Scylla saw the guy, she asked if he was back. He said he heard she had come to visit. The girl invites him to come in quickly and asks if he would like a cup of tea. Then she says that they have just started. A cousin introduces her brother to her friend and asks if he has seen her yet. The red-haired girl greeted Sir Sturmel and said she was Kylie Wayne. She then revealed that she was Scylla's friend and had been invited to the tea ceremony, which is why she came. Kylie asks if the gentleman can spare her just a little bit of his time. He apologizes, saying he got caught in the rain on the way here and doesn't think it's appropriate for him to meet a lady like that. Sheeter says that since she is Scylla's guest, she suggests that they ignore him. The sister asks the brother if he could spare them a little time, even just 5 minutes. He says he has a few things to do. Scylla asks if he can join them for dinner later. He suggests they leave him alone, as this is her house. Then he says he's leaving and wishes them a good time. Kylie turns to the girl and says that she has an urgent matter at home, and then apologizes and leaves. Shoulder asks Scylla if the guest has already left. She replies that the lady cited household chores immediately after he left. The girl reports that Lady Kylie looked like she was about to cry. She then claims he overdid it by interrupting her so abruptly. Hearing this, the gentleman thought about how he always acted like this when Scylla's friends started talking to him. And then he apologized, because he thought it was all his fault. The sister insists she's not saying it's his fault, because she knows a lot of girls try to talk to him. She just thinks he got it all wrong this time, and that's why she wants to explain. Sheeter says he never even thought about it, and explains that now is simply a very important period for his future, and he doesn't like awkward encounters. The girl says that she should be more careful too, and then apologizes. Scylla asks her brother if it's true he'll be leaving home and living independently. She says she heard from her mother that he'll be moving out next spring. The guy replies that when he receives the title, he will start a family, and therefore he must leave, because he believes that one cannot live forever at the expense of one's family. The sister says he's right, and then says she'd like to live together. She insists no one here thinks he's living off his family. Scylla says that since he is leaving this palace, she would be glad if he came to the main building more often. At this time, the guy thought that there was only a 2-year difference between her and Lady Riken, but she was still just a child. The girl says that if something happens to him, he should tell her first and asks if they have an agreement. She asks how he likes Lady Kylie. Shiver wonders if she'll talk about Count Wayne's daughter. Her sister says she's graduating this year, but rumor has it she still hasn't found a date for the prom. Scylla explains that this is actually why she wanted to talk to him today. She suggests that if she doesn't have a partner, they could go together. The young gentleman says he must refuse. Then he explains that Lady Wayne should make a better choice. He tells his sister to leave already as he wants to rest. When the boy was left alone, he realized that despair had enveloped him deep inside. He recalled that almost 10 days had passed since their last meeting, but his soul felt as if it was burning. Shooter decides to take another step because he realizes that he can see her. On New Year's Eve, the Elda Empire's Tower of Mages welcomes Sturmel Raft as Lord of Water and Wind. Sometime later, the young lord was elected the new Duke of the Imperial Palace. However, the title of Duke Sagin is not one of those held in the Elda Empire. Therefore, the imperial family has practically no influence on Sturmel Raft. Aristocrats say among themselves that His Majesty did not participate in the ceremony of awarding the title, but it was bestowed upon him by the princess. The Viscount understands that the princess now has the Duke of Sagin behind her, and all power is in her hands. And it's clear that the next ruler has already been determined, and aristocratic society is in for a major shock. The princess says that she heard that His Majesty sent him a gift, but he didn't even touch it and sent it back. Stadter reports that His Majesty is said to be upset by this. The princess suggests he not worry about what people say. Then she asks if the palace wasn't a place of constant gossip. She suggests they concentrate on their business, since that's how the palace has always been. At this time, the princess thought that by cooperating with him she could not harm her mother. Adore asks the boy if he's back yet. Then he tells him that his mother has been calling him a lot lately, and this is the second time this week since the title ceremony ended. The Baron asks Stera if everything is all right with him. He says that no matter how busy he is, he should at least show up sometimes. The guy replies that, unfortunately, he's very busy. After all, he's building a house and is swamped with paperwork. Adore says he understands, as this might be difficult for him, and he thinks it must be difficult for him. He recalls that when he received the title of Baron, things were very different. However, he can still understand and suggests not to overdo it, since everyone in their house is counting on him. At this time, Mariella came to the main character and told her that she looked so exhausted after her illness. She also asked how Riken was feeling, and if everything was okay. The main character replies that she feels much better now and is grateful for coming. Mariella claims that they were all very worried about her, and then she says that she heard that guests came to visit her the day before yesterday. And she thinks that they probably came to eat sweets under the pretext of a visit. Her friend says she heard everything and asks if she broke up with Sir Sturmel after learning he'd been made a duke. Then she says it's certainly better than letting others gossip about her, and then she asks if she really knew everything. The protagonist replies that it would have happened without her. Then she says that if she had said she'd go to prom with Baron Hadley, she would have believed it. Mariella says choosing a prom date is like choosing a fiancé, and she thinks it should be, which is why her family didn't object to her dating him. Riken explains that it's all in the past, and her friend asks how that could be. The girl explains that she is okay because she was the one who ended everything. The main character explains that Sir Shatter believed that their relationship would endure. She couldn't do this anymore, and she thinks that, in any case, everything is fine, and she has forgotten about everything. The girl reports that today is already the graduation ceremony, and it was an event for men. Men received awards, gave speeches, and it was an event that attracted all eyes, where some official could notice him. Girls often didn't attend such events. After all, most of them were aristocrats. But what really matters to them is the prom, because it's the place where they make a statement and let everyone know they've reached marriageable age and are ready to start a family. Mariella asks if her dress is ready. Riken replies that it is almost ready. A friend says there was a huge band on the back of her dress, and she argued with the nanny for a week, but in the end she took it off. And she says she'll be leaving now because she still needs to get ready. Mariella said they'd see each other tomorrow and told her friend she should dress up. Riken wished her a safe journey. The main character thought that the graduation ball was tomorrow and remembered that she once thought that it was still far away, but now she understands that this is already the end. It was time for a ball the girl would never have gone to, and she realized that no matter how much makeup she put on, she couldn't shake off this gloomy mood. Riken thought about how she'd even decided to take better care of her skin this time, but she didn't see the point. The mother asks her daughter if she is ready. Then she says that her daughter is beautiful because her dress fits. The maid informs the mistress that Baron Hadley has arrived. Mama says he's just in time, as they've finished all the preparations. Penny tells the lady that she brought her shoes, and they have only a very small heel so that she would match the Baron's height. When the girl saw this guy, she thought he looked familiar. The herald kissed the woman's hand, and the main character saw him smiling so sincerely and realized he had always been like this. The father tells the boy to take care of Riken. He assures him that his daughter will be safe and tells him not to worry about it. The father says it was an unexpected request and thanks him for accepting it. The boy insists he should be grateful since he gave him such an important role. Harold says that he learned that his mother offered him to her as a partner, and that makes him a little uncomfortable. The main character objects and says that the Baroness must have just been worried about her. The guy says his mother must really like her. The lady says his mother must think their families are a good match. At this point, Riken thought that this situation was also uncomfortable for Gerald, and she believed it would be better if they were more comfortable with each other. The girl tells the Baron he needn't worry so much. Then she explains that she's seen plenty of people, but not many gentlemen among them. She says that when he said he'd keep her company, she felt better. The guy tells her he's glad she thinks that. At that moment, the girl thinks that's his facial expression, and when he's nervous, he always smiles like that. Gerald lost his father in childhood and became the head of the family early on. He always suffered under the pressure of those around him and his responsibilities. The main character believes that in this life she must help him, and she understands that she must be the one who knows him best in this world. Riken believes that this time, they will be able to live happily. The lady tells the Baron that if he doesn't want to stay long, they can just dance the mazurka and leave. He replies that he doesn't mind and asks if everything will be alright, since it's her graduation ball. The girl insists she doesn't like such lavish banquets. Since this isn't a celebration in her honor, she thinks this will suffice. The lady says that even if she stays until the end, people with strange interests will probably approach her. The guy says that's what they'll do then. Then he takes the girl's hand. When Deborah saw Riken, she said the dress suited her very well and greeted them. The main character greeted her friend and said she also looked very beautiful today. Ladies, I wonder if anyone's arrived yet. The girl with black hair says she's glad everyone has found partners. Deborah suggests Riken look elsewhere, since Baronador Raft has arrived. Then she reports that word has it he's starting to slowly make his appearance in high society. A friend says he's already 24 and still single, and she thinks Lady Scylla is officially making her debut. Riken says he's not on their level anyway, since he's suited to girls in his own circle. Deborah suggests they watch, since he's come as Lady Wayne's partner, and she thinks the two of them are so popular and so handsome. A friend asks Riken if she's ever met Baron Raft. She replies that they've never crossed paths. Deborah wonders if he'll be coming too. The herald says that if they are talking about Duke Sagan, he has heard that he will not appear in high society for some time. Upon hearing this, her friend said she was disappointed, since he was a great man and she would have liked to see him, even if only from afar. Suddenly, the main character saw that Sir Sturmel had arrived at the ball. Deborah asks Riken if she is okay, because her complexion has changed. The main character says she'll go to their break room for a minute. Then she turns to Baron Hadley and says they'll see each other later. When the girl was alone, she thought that everything was fine with her. Nanny tells her mistress that she was looking for her and asks if she's okay. Then she reports that she was a little rude to Baron Hadley and the others. Riken says she realizes she needs to apologize because she suddenly disappeared. She realized the song she wanted to dance to had just come on. Miss Rod says she probably knows herself that even if something is bothering her, she must remain resilient. She asserts that a true lady never allows herself to lose her dignity. The young lady replies that she knows and then apologizes. The nanny says she has nothing to apologize for. Then she says her makeup and hair are still intact, and her dress isn't even wrinkled. The nanny tells her not to worry, as she's very beautiful. Then she asks if she wants to go home. The girl replies that she must first apologize to Baron Hadley. Miss Rod says that she too was unable to convey anything to him since she came here. Riken asks if she could ask him to meet her in the room where the tea ceremony is held. The nanny says she'll tell him that. When the young lady was left alone, she thought that she should calm down and act calmly, like an adult with dignity. The main character looked into the hall and realized that everyone was already there. She thought it would be difficult for the herald to come to her because there were so many people there. She therefore believed she should find another room. Kylie asks Lady Riken if she's there too. At this point, the main character thinks that no matter how hard she tries, she'll never be able to return to being a sincere little girl. Riken says they haven't seen each other in a while. Kylie replies that the last time they saw each other was when she visited the Viscontessa. Then she asks if they can talk. Lady Wayne says that her partner was supposed to be Sir Sturmel, but she came with Baron Hadley. The young lady insists it's all true. However, Wayne says it's somehow impolite to her partner, and she heard that she invited him and then turned him down. And then he tells her not to think it's impolite. Riken explains that it was too late to change partners. Kylie says she might not have known about it when she first proposed, but she can't change her mind after they've already made their promise. Then she reveals that she's disgraced Sir Sturmel. At this time, Lady Wayne thought that when she found out that Lady Riken had become his partner, perhaps this was how he wanted to calm her down, because she was able to endure even the fact that he refused her. Kylie thought about how she wanted to become a noble lady who could stay by his side, and she believed everything was going according to plan until she heard the story of his breakup with Lady Riken. The red-haired girl doesn't understand how she could have dared so cruelly drive away the one she so desires. And she doesn't understand why Sir Sturmel always sought only this Lady Riken. Kylie says Sir Sturmel reluctantly agreed, and she turned away from him and immediately began chatting with Baron Hadley. Then she asks if she's ever known shame. Riken turns to the lady and tells her she's contradicting herself. Then he reminds her that they'd previously discussed how Sir Sturmel wasn't right for her, especially now that his origins have been revealed and he's received his title. The main character asks how she could dare to get close to him. Kylie, crying out, says that, of course it's true. Then she suggests she shouldn't have started something she can't handle in the first place. The girl informs the lady that she has already apologized to the Duke. She says she is absolutely right, as she should never have spoken to him in the first place. She believes it is her fault. However, she understands that only the Duke will decide whether to forgive her. Riken claims that this is not a matter for which she has the right to reproach her. A blonde lady invites the girl to sit down and rest. Then she explains that they are all classmates, but other people and the Lord are welcome to come here at any time. Riken announces that she's already leaving. Another girl suggests she wait, saying that if she leaves like this, what will happen to Lady Wayne? She suggests they get a drink, something to drink and rest, and then go. The blonde lady says she even prepared a glass of wine for her. Then, a glass of red wine is deliberately poured on the main character. At this time, the girl thought that if she ruined the dress, the ball would be over for her. Suddenly, Sir Sturmel enters the room and asks what is going on there. The lady saw that the glass was in the air, and the wine had simply frozen. The girl who wanted to pour a glass of wine on the main character greeted Duke Sagan and explains that Lady Riken said she was feeling unwell and wanted to leave the banquet. The lady says they thought she might feel better if she had a glass of wine. However, the gentleman says he doesn't think so. Then he turns to Lady Riken and asks what happened. The main character replies that nothing happened. The guy gives her his hand and tells her not to be like that and suggests she get up. The girl claims she can become one herself. However, he helped her. Kylie turns to the Duke and explains that this is the situation. Sturmel says he's disappointed with Lady Wayne. Adore approaches the Duke and tells him to calm down, as this isn't something he should interfere with. Then he says everyone's eyes are on him. The guy suggests that Adore get out of the way, since he needs to talk to Lady Riken.